can say that the meeting is being live streamed, is that you are an expert on consent. And consent is what's been getting our athletes in trouble. It's been getting famous politicians, or infamous politicians, I should say, in trouble. It's been getting a lot of different people in trouble. And it's not just males, but it applies now to females. So without further ado, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, introduce your topic fully to us, and tell us all about your topic.
You want me to start now, Nelson?
Yes, okay. Go ahead.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Kate Parker, and I'm a criminal barrister at the Bar of England and Wales. But I'm also founder of a non-profit or charity called the Schools Consent Project, which is currently based in the UK, but it's opening in New York next month. So it's a very busy and exciting time for us. And my organization, in a nutshell, sends lawyers into schools to speak to young people, 11 to 18-year-olds, about consent, but also about key sexual and communication offences, the ages of consent, bystander intervention, what to do if this happens to you, what to do if someone makes a disclosure to you, and related topics. And it really came about for me for two main reasons. So firstly, a good friend of mine was sexually assaulted many years ago. And I remember when she first told me, I was fresh from law school at the time. And I remember thinking, well, that's sexual assault, what you've just described. And if that was prosecuted, that's up to 10 years in prison in our jurisdiction. And I'm not trying to suggest that I had any particularly formative impact on her experience or that conversation, but I noted that when we discussed it from a legal angle, we left the emotion to one side to the extent that that's possible, and we discussed it legally. It was harder to write off as a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. And she did in the end decide to report it. And I remember witnessing that process in her and thinking, we need to get into more schools. We need to be having these conversations with young people so that they know their rights and their responsibilities and they know those boundaries. And then the second thing that brought about the Schools Consent Project is I then went into my practice as a criminal barrister. And I had case after case land on my desk that felt very preventable. It felt like with the right education, with the right guidance, these young people wouldn't be here. And to focus on just one law in particular, I have so many cases, I still do have so many cases that deal with the sending of indecent images, so sexual images. Now, our law over here hasn't updated from the late 1970s. And what that means is when you have a 17-year-old texting her boyfriend a topless photograph, something quite innocuous like that, that is charged as the production of child pornography under our current law. And anyone who distributes those images is charged with distributing pornography, child pornography. And of course, that has very serious ramifications indeed. Not only could you end up with a conviction and certain years behind bars, depending on the gravity of the case, but we have what's called notification requirements over here, which means you'd be placed on the sex offenders register. That means that you are very limited in what you can do. You have to inform the police of practically everything, change of phone number, change of car, change of address, all sorts. But it prohibits you from going into certain careers. It prohibits you from traveling to the United States as well. So it's important, we feel, for young people to know that, fine, make the decisions that they want to make. And we never tell young people not to do something. We never lecture at them about their behavior, but we simply say, make those decisions against a context, a backdrop of information, right? Know what could happen if this goes wrong and know how strict these laws are in this area. And one of the ways that we like to explore those laws and bring them to life a bit is with this game. So I've just told you about the law of sexting. And the way we actually bring that to life in front of our classrooms is we give a young person in the front row a sheet of paper. And I say, all right, you've got 30 seconds. I want you to rip that in two and pass it to the two people either side of you. You guys, when you have the paper, rip it in two and pass it along to people either side of you, and so on and so forth for 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, I say, right, time is up. Hands up, who's got a piece of paper? And the whole classroom's hands go up. And I go, if that was an indecent image of someone under the age of 18, you're all guilty of sexting, effectively child pornography. And you can imagine how wide-eyed my audience is, because they don't expect that the laws are so tough in this area. And my job is to provide them with that information. When I set it up, I thought, if I can get back into my old school, if I can speak to maybe 50 students, 100 students, I'd consider myself, proud of what I've set up, and my job would be done. And what I hadn't appreciated way back in 2015 is that the Me Too movement was coming around the corner, and the Time's Up movement was coming around the corner, and the Everyone's Invited movement was coming around the corner. And if you haven't heard of the latter movement, that's because it's quite specific to the UK. And it was a movement that started in our schools, where our young people, girls and boys, were saying, this is not on. We suffer sexual name calling, sexual abuse, receiving indecent images as we move through the school as part of our school day, and it's not on, and we're not having it anymore. And that caused a massive fuss over here, as you can imagine. People were horrified to discover that this behavior was happening in schools. And it brought about a rapid review from our schools regulator. And they've effectively said, as a result, that consent must be taught in schools. But the point of all of that is to say this: I hadn't appreciated that the culture at the time was changing to the extent that it has done so. And so when I set it up thinking, if I speak to 50 students, that's a job done, I'm delighted to say that we've now spoken to over 30,000 young people across the UK through a team of 200 lawyers, some of whom are at the sort of, the top law firms, Linklaters, Dentons, Kirkland and Ellis, Reed Smith, Cleary Gottlieb. We have lawyers across the board, and we have some trial advocates as well, and criminal trial advocates who were able to say to our young people, look, when I get a case and it's a defense in a rape, or I'm prosecuting a child sexual exploitation case, this is the sort of thing I'm looking at. And that I think comes across with a good deal of authority and gravity and accuracy when you go into schools. And so not only have we achieved real re-education at scale, but we've also won an award from the UK's Prime Minister. We've been invited into Parliament to discuss our work. We are partnering at the moment with the Crown Prosecution Service and the Metropolitan Police Service to roll out our workshops at scale. Now, you might ask me, well, how do I know, Kate, that these workshops are working? How do you know that they're successful? Because, of course, the difficulty here is that effectively we're proving a negative, right? Like, if these work to the extent I want them to work, people aren't raping and people aren't sexually assaulting. And the way we know that they're working really is twofold. So firstly, perhaps a sort of crude metric to measure these, but the feedback that we get when we go in there, we have an overwhelmingly positive response from our young people who feel delighted that they're finally able to ask these questions. They have a space to talk about sex in their school curriculum, which they're all baffled by, and that those questions are answered with legal accuracy and authority. And so the feedback forms we get time after time are, this was, the best lesson that we've had all term. This was amazing. We should have had this younger. But also what we're seeing from our schools is a spike in disclosure. So when we come in and we deliver a workshop, there is more often than not a wave of students coming forward and saying, this happened to me. And the reason we take that as a positive is because not only do we feel like we are teaching young people where these boundaries lie, but also we're empowering them to start this conversation and to say, look, this happened to me and it's not okay. Because of the success that we've had over here, we've been lucky enough to achieve a certain profile in the UK. I've mentioned already the award from the Prime Minister and the collaborations that we have in the pipeline. And that profile brought about a really formative conversation for us in autumn of 2021, when the producer of a play called Prima Facie got in touch with me and said, look, we're coming to the West End to a big theatre called the Harold Pinter Theatre. We've got this massive star in Jodie Comer, and we'd like you to be our official fundraising partner. And as you can imagine, it was a very quick yes from me to be their fundraising partner. Now, the play in a nutshell is about a criminal barrister who goes through life defending often men accused of sex crimes, and she does so very well, and she gets them acquitted. And then she herself is raped, and she goes through the system as a victim, and she sees it through very different eyes, and she sees the pitfalls of the system, the way it's letting victims down, and the fact that there is just inexplicable delay in our system, which I should say is absolutely right. That is the experience of the criminal justice system. It takes, on average, it's sort of over 700 days from complaint through to trial. And as you can imagine, in that system, people are dropping out because they're saying, well, it takes too long to get justice. I'm moving on with my life. I don't want to be part of this system anymore. That play had an enormously positive impact over here in the UK. We benefited from that. I can say that because we saw a huge spike in workshop bookings. We saw donations roll in, other opportunities. So it was an amazing experience for us. But what I noticed as a practitioner, as a criminal lawyer, and I should say a lot of our judiciary went to see the play and a lot of our legal industry. And I started to notice that judges, often female judges, were slightly tweaking their directions to juries to, I think, reflect the message of the play. Because the big point of it is trauma does not, or rather trauma-informed testimony does not come out in a way that's neat and clear and logical and easy to listen to. Sometimes you get flashes of certain things coming to you and you forget others, but that doesn't mean that the truth of what they're saying, that doesn't undermine the truth of what they're saying. And given our system over here, which is very combative and it's very pinned on trying to tear the case down through showing doubt or through showing inconsistency or through showing an evolution in someone's answer, that those ways to attack a prosecution and attack a case don't always sit so neatly with someone who's giving trauma-informed testimony. And so I noticed in my practice, judges start to say, well, members of the jury, she, and it is often statistically a she, may not have come across as that ordered or logical in the way she presented her account, but victims of sexual violence aren't always ordered and logical in the way they give their accounts. And I've seen that sort of response come out through our judiciary, which has been heartening. The producer of this play sat me down last summer and said, the play has gone so well, we want to go out to Broadway in New York. Will you come with us and will you be our official fundraising partner out there? And will you open a New York chapter? And at the time I thought, gosh, what a huge step that would be for us. Let me have a look into it. And when I did, I noticed two things stand out. Firstly, that whatever I think of the state of sex and relationship education in the UK, I'm afraid to say it's 10 times worse in America, because the only thing that has statutory footing, the only thing you have to teach in schools is HIV awareness and AIDS awareness. That is a matter of law. Everything else is down to the discretion of the school. So you have very progressive schools that are having good conversations, progressive conversations with their students. They're talking about consent, they're talking about safeguarding. And you have other schools, and I don't say this critically, I know schools are overwhelmed, but you do have other schools that don't have time for these conversations or don't have the right way to approach them, or there might be sensitive cultural issues, or there are all sorts of reasons not to have these conversations. And I think when we move the lens from we're having a conversation with young people about sex to we're safeguarding our young people, we're making them equipped for adult life and for the day-to-day interactions that they are going to come across, whether we like it or not, I think we get much more traction from schools. So that was the first thing I noticed, that the state of sex and relationship education just wasn't fit for purpose. And it's heartening to see that there are consistently calls for legislative change. I mean, you know, I'm focusing on New York in particular because that's where we're launching. People aren't just rolling over and taking this in New York. You know, they want better SRE and they are demanding it. And the second thing I noticed was the fact that sexual violence in the US is pandemic. It might as well be called that. Because every 98 seconds in America, a woman is sexually violated. Every day, 70 women commit suicide in the aftermath of sexual violence. And we know from the World Health Organization that globally, 1 in 3 women experience violence in their lifetime. And so the US, I'm afraid to say, really is a sort of touchstone of these sorts of issues. And so the more I looked into it, the more I realized that it was a natural next step to take the Schools Consent Project stateside. We're going to start in New York in tandem with the play. We come over next month and we're getting to know our lawyers, we're getting to know our schools. And so if anyone listening is a lawyer wanting to volunteer or knows a school that might be interested, please do get in touch. Our website is, you just type into Google schoolsconsentproject.com and you'll find us. But New York is really our first dip of the toe in overseas waters. And to be quite honest with you, what I would like and what my 10-year plan is to get into as many states as I can. New York is on the more progressive side. You will all know the states I'm talking about when I say that they aren't all like that. And that actually, it is often really difficult to have these conversations in certain schools. But the way I see this going is I almost like to think of us as a Uber or a Deliveroo of legal services. Perhaps I need to rethink the branding there. But I come to a new jurisdiction, I get my law translated. And right now for New York, I've had a firm translate it into New York state and federal law. I get to know the lawyers, I train them up in our material, I get to know the schools, and then I put the lawyers in touch with the schools. So it's my role in this, or my organization's role is in many ways operational or logistical. And that actually both the need and the demand, the demand and the supply are already there. So as I say, as we move from state to state, I'm hoping that we can nimbly put one in contact with the other. And hopefully, once we take it around the US, we will start to look at other countries as well. There's no reason why in time I can't be putting Spanish lawyers into Spanish schools or Caribbean lawyers into Caribbean schools, right? Like we really see the potential here for this to be a global movement. And to end by tying into the work that I know that this panel focuses on and your listeners focus on, which is much more to do with human trafficking and child sexual exploitation. The reason that we say this work is so relevant is because once we empower our young people to be able to identify those boundaries, to communicate them, to check for them in others, to say when something's not okay, the more it will be easier from a grassroots level to resist that sort of behavior and those sorts of practices, because it will be coming from our young people to say something's not right here, I don't feel happy, I don't feel comfortable. And the hope is that it will educate people not to engage in those sorts of practices as well. That was quite a ramble, that was a lot of information, but that's my speech, that's my talk. I don't know if there are any questions or if you want to move to anyone else, but I hand back over to you.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah, I have to unmute. That's right. I'm speaking here without unmuting. That was very direct, and thank you very much. Just to clarify for some of our listeners, when you say barrister, and I know in the Caribbean, we are familiar with the term barrister, and barristers try cases. Am I correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the other solicitor is what?
So a solicitor is focused more on case management, on client management. It's still a very legal role, but it's everything other than what you do in court. So we have
paralegal.
Yeah, closer to a paralegal, exactly. A paralegal is a little less trained than a solicitor. A solicitor, conducts cases start to finish, but and they instruct me, so they will hire me to take the case forward in court. But we have a split profession over here. It's not fused as you guys have in the US. And it means that I'm specifically trained in trial advocacy. I'm not trained in, case management, that sort of thing. Yeah. Whereas my solicitor would be, but they don't have any what we call rights of audience. So they can't, unless in certain circumstances, go into a court and start speaking.
Now, you mentioned a while ago, texting, topless photos, and that person gets in trouble because it went to 20 of their friends and they kept passing it around. All 20 are now in trouble. Is there any chance all 20 would be on a no-fly list because of that, if they're going to be refused entry into the US or anywhere else?
It's possible legally, but it's unlikely, because for any prosecution to start in our country, there's a two-stage test for the CPS to pass by. So firstly, is there enough evidence? And there might be. But secondly, is it in the public interest? And it's really that second limb where you would expect most challenge, right? If I was defending, I would say really like my 15-year-old who received a topless photo and didn't delete it quickly enough and made the mistake of pinging it on to someone else, you're really going to prosecute him. Do we think that's proportionate? Do we think that's the best use of taxpayer money, et cetera, et cetera? But technically, they could be pursued for that sort of behavior. Yeah.
And then the other big what if question, what if you're the older brother or sister and your younger kin gets such a message, and, looks at it on your account, and you have no idea that it's there, but all of a sudden it shows up, and now you are about to be prosecuted. Is there any relief for that person?
So let me get this right. If you have something on your phone, you're of age, you're legal, and someone younger just happens to come across your phone, your kid's sister, your kid brother, and they have a look at it. I mean, right. Depending on the circumstances, you, as the owner of that phone, could technically be done for distributing the image, but it would really depend in what circumstances they came to look at it. If it was distributing by our legislation literally means showing someone a photo. So that could be showing it on your phone. That constitutes distributing, as well as printing out hard copy photos and manually distributing them, which is perhaps how we consider the term. But I think if it was very accidental, if someone stumbled across someone's phone and just happened to come across an image, I would be very surprised to see any sort of criminal sanction there.
Okay, I got you. Our moderator today is Special Agent retired Rattigan, and he's also an attorney, so you may have some friendly questions for you.
Oh, no, I don't have any. No, I do have questions, Kate. Not so fast. Not so fast. I have a couple of questions. One is, you mentioned that this idea of what you're doing hasn't really taken hold in the US. And I'm not surprised, because I'm looking at a piece of research I did, and it says children's rights are enshrined in the 1989 United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the most ratified human rights treaty in the world. Only one of the UN's 197 member states hasn't ratified the convention, and that is the United States. Yeah. So it's a shame. Oh my God. Yeah. Perfect. So I'm not really surprised by after reading this. I was surprised when you said, if I hadn't read this, I would be really surprised. But after reading this, I go, okay, no wonder. Now, let me ask you this. You're in the schools, and we know that I shouldn't say most, but we believe that a significant incident of child molestation, child abuse, they're not reported. And we also know from our research in the States that a lot of this abuse takes place at home or with a family member, right? So the question is, how do you reach those people? Do you have social workers attached to your organization that they can actually go to the homes? Because the school is one thing, but what I'm thinking is that some of these children, they might be tempted not to express what happened for fear of embarrassment. Yeah. And so they just say, oh, everything is fine, everything is okay. So do you go beyond the schoolroom or the classroom to say, okay, let's see what's going on in the homes, or do you wait to see if there's, you said, nah, this child is telling me, nothing, but I sense that there's something wrong here. I need to get a social worker out to the house. Yeah,
it's a really good question. And I mean, listen, I wish that we could do a deep dive into every area of that child's life and make sure it was safe and healthy and they were getting the right information. But, at the end of the day, we're a group of like-minded lawyers who are able to access schools very easily. We're not able to access homes as easily. But the way we are, to an extent, addressing it is two-pronged. Firstly, we offer workshops for parents. So we will say, we're going to come in and we're going to have these conversations. It's about safeguarding. It's nothing controversial, but if you feel uncomfortable, come to a parent session with us a few days before, ask your questions. We'll tell you what we're going to talk to your young person about. And 10 times out of 10, when they hear that actually we're not, I don't say this critically, but we're not sort of untrained, unqualified, random members of the public coming into their school, that we're criminal lawyers who are trained in this, that really calms the parents down. because they know that, you know, we're coming at this from a specific angle. It's about the laws, it's about safeguarding, and we're not telling everyone's kids to go off and have sex underage or anything like that at all. We're just saying, here are the thresholds. So that's one thing that we do. The second thing that we're doing, it's a state of development right now, but more things like podcasts, reading material, worksheets, things that can come out of the school and out of the workshop and be followed up at home. Now, you might say to that, well, Kate, you need a parent on board with those sorts of materials if they're going to fly, if they're going to be successful. But we are trying to the best way that we can to have a more holistic conversation, because I completely agree with you that if the kid is getting one narrative at school and a very different narrative at home, or abuse at home, it's very difficult for the kid to come forward. It's very, very difficult for the kid to come forward. And we should say, incredibly robust safeguarding measures our side, so that if we even identify a kid that looks, you know, they don't even have to say anything. If they're looking uncomfortable, that's on our radar and we report that upwards. So yeah, that's not going to be a satisfactory answer to your question. I wish I could say, you know, we do work in homes as well as schools, but that's all we can offer.
One of the things that and I'm just throwing this out as a suggestion, is that you may, in your attempt to reach these children, have some form of alliance or working relationship with Department of Social Services, because they will send people to the homes. If you think that there's something just not right with this child, then, you know, they'll work alongside you and they'll send social workers home to probe a little bit further. So you don't have to actually go out and do it.
Either social workers ourselves. So the school system in the US and the UK, they have a contact point to social services, albeit in different ways. So over here in the UK, we have what's called designated safeguarding leads, and it's their responsibility where there's an escalation to, if they believe it appropriate, bring in social services, bring in the police, etc., etc. There's a different role in the US. In fact, I spoke to someone in the New York Department of Education yesterday who gave me the name, and it's gone whizzing out of my head. I think it's something like a guidance counselor or something like that.
Guidance counselor, yeah.
Guidance counselor, who again occupies that role, as I understand it, of like focusing on the kids' well-being. If there's something up from a safeguarding angle, that lies in their hands to take it forward. It lies in their hands to take it forward. And so as a result, we feel a certain level of comfort that ultimately it's someone's responsibility within the school to have those conversations with those external organizations. Our role is to start the ball rolling by having those conversations with the guidance counselors and the designated safeguarding leads. So yeah, to the extent that answers your question, yeah.
Let me throw another situation at you. In Jamaica recently, well, it's been going on for decades, but recently in Jamaica, we had a situation where I think it's a minister was visiting a hospital, and Jeff and Herb, you can correct me. I think she's associated with the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, she's the junior minister,
minister, right? She went to a hospital to visit these new mothers, and I think several of them, they were underage. They gave birth underage. It's not like even they got pregnant just before they turned the age of majority and then they delivered after them. These were like 15-year-old children giving birth. And she's there taking pictures with them. And we're saying, you need to find out who got these young women pregnant and you need to lock them up, because that's an easy case. That's statutory rape. How do you address something like that if you come across where a 15-year-old, for example, has given birth? Do you pursue it, or do you just say, oh, you know, what's done cannot be undone?
Well, we should be. I mean, we have, so for us, statutory rape is anything under 13, but it's absolutely illegal to have sex and impregnate someone who is under the age of 16. It's just the way we talk about it is slightly different. And I would have thought from a prosecution perspective and an evidential perspective, if you can identify someone who has impregnated someone who is giving birth under the age of 16, that is a surefire case. And I can't see any clear reason why that wouldn't be prosecuted.
Let me ask, this is like an FBI question. This is not, if you could describe the most difficult, the most challenging thing you had to face in your role doing this project, what would it be?
Oh, that's such a good question. There are so many challenges. How do I pick one? I think it is trying to convince the gatekeepers, because I think that the kids understand why we're relevant.
Mhm.
The kids often invite us in because we have quite a big social media presence now.
Right.
We're more often getting kids come across on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and write to their schools and say, we want to get the school's consent project in. Where I see resistance, and I should say it's getting less and less because of the times we live in, but where I see resistance is often in schools saying, I don't know if that's relevant here. My old school, I should say, I'm not going to name and shame it, but my old school, which considers itself to be like a, top independent London day school, didn't want to have us back in because they thought it was a concession that something was going wrong, right? That they had a problem behind their doors, and that if you have to get in lawyers to talk to the kids about consent, something awful must be happening. And I find that mindset really frustrating, because I think I would love you all to come and see one of our workshops, by the way. You're very welcome to if you're ever in New York. But when you see it, you will see that it's such a positive learning experience. And it's about, as I've said already, getting young people to understand these boundaries and listen to them. It's not, our line is not, kids should go off and be sexually active. That's not it at all. We're just saying, if you come across this content, this is what to do. If you're thinking of sending this content, think again. If someone does this to you, that's not right, speak out. It's those sorts of conversations which are only safeguarding, they're only good things. And I think for teachers or schools to view it through more cynical, suspicious lenses is frustrating, because we really are just trying to do good work.
Let me ask you one more question before, I know Jeff wants to ask you a question. What do you do if, this is a compound question, how do you get into schools? And what do you do if a school just, if you've been told that, look, there's a problem over here and you would like to make a presentation to the children, and the administrator said, no, we don't want you here. Do you then call the police or social worker, or you just ignore it and move to the next school?
I mean, they don't need to invite us in, right? We are an external agency. We charge a fee. It's not a high fee, but we charge a fee. And I should say we're still very much non-profit because they don't even touch the sides about operational costs, but we do charge a fee. If a school is really resistant, I will try my best to persuade them, but if they're not being persuaded, I have about, we have about 20 schools in our inbox every day wanting us to come in and do workshops. So at the end of the day, you get to the point where you're like, well, our work is needed and wanted elsewhere, so that's where we'll go. It's frustrating when that happens. And that's what I mean about the gatekeeper point, where you have a really enthusiastic student body, but it's the teachers pushing back. But increasingly, we're starting to get into some real big name schools over in the UK. I don't know if you'll have heard of like Eton and Westminster, schools like that. And once you get through their doors, other schools that are a little unsure say, okay, well, you've been into Eton, you clearly know what you're doing, come in and speak to our students. In answer to the first part of your question, which is how do we get into schools? I have to say, I've only sent about 5 outreach letters in my entire life. When we were first setting this up, I targeted about 5 or so schools. And I thought, God, this is going to be such a burden. I'm going to have to draft these all the time. Because we do such a successful workshop, and I will blow my own trumpet here, it does really work, and it's a really good workshop. It's continued through word of mouth, because not only will they invite us back in to deal with younger year groups or older year groups or whatever, they all know schools in their area, and they'll say, oh, we had the school's consent project in last Tuesday. They were great. Why don't you get us in? So that's how we've got to 30,000 young people educated. It's not because I'm writing every day to a new school. It's because the time is now. People want to have these conversations, and schools are coming to me rather than the other way around.
Yeah, the question I was really driving at, though, is if you get wind of the fact that there's something going on with the children in this particular school, and you say, okay, I've got to go, and you send out your letter, and the administrator said, nah, everything is fine, we don't need you here, and you send out another letter and they said, no, and you do a phone call, no, we don't need you here. At what do you have an obligation at that point to say, you know what, I may not go, but I need to have a social worker or the police go and just check this out, just to make sure that there's nothing going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few things to say on that. Firstly, I would want to be sure what the source is, right?
Mhm.
Because we all work in evidence, roles. And I think there's one thing, someone saying down the pub, oh, this school is a bit dodgy, and another where you have actual evidence that something's going wrong. Where I were to have actual evidence, of course, I'd go to the student, the school body and say, well, we've had this, but also we're going to refer it to the police, because the way we work in our safeguarding is any concern, we escalate, because the flip side is if we don't escalate it and something really was wrong, they are in trouble and we are in trouble, and it's an awful situation. I have to say, we haven't come across that in the UK. So I know you're speaking hypothetically, we haven't come across that. Where I mentioned in my talk that our schools regulator got involved and did a rapid review into sexual abuse in schools, that came out, I think it was September 2021, and they identified loads of schools where there were huge issues. I've noticed that those schools, and they were named in this everyone's invited movement, they were specifically identified. Those schools, more often than not, have come to us and said, we have a problem, we want help, can you come in and help us? So actually, where there's more public scrutiny, public exposure or humiliation, that's where a school has been really easy to work with, because they know they've got a problem and they want to do something about it. Mm-hmm. I hope that better answers your question.
It does. It does. Thanks.
Great. Good afternoon or good morning. Is it morning in London or evening?
It's nearly 6 p.m. in London, so we're a little we're working with time difference here.
There's a situation that I am aware of that happened in Jamaica, and I don't know how would you deal with it. There is a church situation where a pastor of a church, a well-known bishop of a church, sexually molested a 15-year-old. It was reported to the government agency, SISOCA, and nothing was done about it. So, when we have organizations like these where children get molested, and you think the state will step in, and also in the state itself, you have state organizations that bring in other people from overseas and sexually assault them. And the government does nothing about it. If you were in Jamaica's situation where this is going on in Jamaica, how would you approach it?
That's such a tough question. And it sounds like, from what you've told me, it feels as though these systems are letting young people down massively.
Indeed.
And I say that from I'm not trying to defend our own CPS and MPS. We make mistakes as well, and it's not always perfect at all. But I can't understand how something like that there's been no action. There's been nothing whatsoever in response to something like that. What would I do if I was in Jamaica faced with that situation? I mean, my instinct, and this is just my legal instinct, is if there was a decision from the CPS equivalent, the prosecution equivalent, not to prosecute, I'd judicially review that decision, I think, because obviously they're a limb of government, and I would challenge that there in fact isn't enough evidence, or it's not in the public interest to take that forward. I don't know if there's any, we have a body over here called the Law Commission that reviews cases and laws where they're just unfair, effectively, they're just not really fit for purpose, and they can intervene, and often they would write like a recommendation document to the CPS to do a certain thing, or to change, to look at a certain law or whatever. And I don't know enough about Jamaican criminal legal system to know whether or not that body exists and can intervene. But then if we take it out of a legal setting, I mean, power to the people is what I always feel. If that's an outrageous decision, as it sounds like it absolutely is, perhaps there could be protests. There's ways of letting your politicians know that the people aren't happy with those decisions.
Kate, sorry to butt in when you're speaking. But if in the organization that I'm speaking about, a government organization, it has been happening for what, over 3-4 years, Ratty?
Yeah. In fact, let me just add a little bit more to that. This gentleman came in under the auspices of providing social services to at-risk young women. Primarily, they have a facility for young boys, but I'm hearing that there are shenanigans going on over there as well. But he would end up in compromising positions with these young at-risk women. And the government, because he came in with money and he came in saying, look, I'm going to provide all of these services, they basically gave him free rein. And so he did whatever he wanted to do. And to make it even worse, this was reported a long time before he actually left the country. And you would think that they would put a stop on his passport to make sure that he didn't leave. He's gone. And then what happened after he left? The story just got swept under the rug, and you don't hear anything more about it.
So when you have state entities like those that don't protect the children, don't they have some psychological problem there now to say, I'm being molested at home and now I'm put into the state care, and the state care is doing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think they clearly have deep-seated issues. I think one awful reality of the space that we all work in is that it can attract those who want to abuse young people or want to abuse women, because it's easy. It's, when I say easy access, I don't really mean that, but I mean it's access to vulnerable people, it's access to women, it's access to children. We have to be incredibly rigorous with who we put into classrooms, right? Because, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it has the risk of attracting people who have the wrong type of interest in children, right? So one of the things that we do is we do a DBS check on everyone. We do a background check on everyone going into our school. And we make sure that they have nothing on their criminal record. There's no police intelligence or anything like that. But we also do various other things just to make sure that everyone we're putting before school is legitimate, is who they say they should be. But it's an absolutely difficult scenario, isn't it? Because there are, no system, I think, is absolutely impenetrable to someone with a committed psychological issue and a committed desire to abuse others. And it's awful when it happens, particularly because those women that individual set out to help, I imagine, are much more vulnerable than the average woman, right? And they're much more perhaps distrustful of those in authority, also less likely to report anything. It's just like a perfect storm for exploitation. And it's appalling. And I'm so sorry that, it hasn't been escalated. I wonder whether, it sounded like something fairly historical. Is it something where, do you think if it happened today, there would be the same reaction or lack of reaction?
No, it's not historical. It happened a few months ago.
Few months ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's been going on for years, but it came to light a few months ago, and then he took off. And
how is there not any sort of like cross-jurisdictional law enforcement to bring that person to justice? Would there not be like an international arrest warrant, that sort of thing?
Of course they should, but we haven't heard anything about them doing, anything about it. And the stories about his involvement with these at-risk women came to light way before he left the island. And you would think they would, and not only that, based on Jamaican law, they could have arrested him.
Yeah.
They could have arrested him just based on what the young girls were saying. But what happened is that he came in with money and the people, the administrators who were in charge, they just turned a blind eye to it. And even though they were told that this was going on, they turned a blind eye to it. And so,
but not only that, Mr. Rattigan and Kate, is that the Jamaican government did no background check on this individual, none whatsoever. Because if they did, they'd have known that in the state of Washington, he was an unknown child molester.
You know what, Kate? If they had done a simple Google search, it would have turned up a case that he got his license suspended in Washington State for molesting children. A simple Google search.
I wonder there whether, and I'm just thinking out loud here, there could be a sort of civil claim brought against the body that employed him. I'm not a civil lawyer and I don't know the details of the case, but it strikes me that level of like incompetence in public office could be held legally accountable. But I don't know enough about it, but and it would need to be, I imagine, a claim brought by the victims. And one difficulty in this area is that victims often just want to move on with their life. They don't want to, they might not have the resources or the willpower to continue with this. They just want to heal. And so it's really tricky to know what the next step is, and hugely frustrating for you guys. You say if there'd been a Google search, it's so preventable.
You know what happened? The minister was called on the carpet about this, and her action was complete denial. She was like, I heard about it and I asked him to do an investigation. No follow-up whatsoever. And she's like, my hands are clean, my soul is refreshed. I had nothing to do with it. And the only thing that's happened so far is that the head of the agency, everyone was calling for her to be removed. And the Governor General finally asked the Civil Service Commission to remove her, take her tenureship or whatever. And that's the only thing that's happened. And those women are probably going to be damaged for life.
They're scarred, yes. And the government of Jamaica sit down and did nothing, not one single thing they did about it.
We had a situation here that you may have heard about fairly recently where we had a serving Metropolitan Police officer, whilst acting in his capacity as a police officer, stop a woman using his police badge when he was off duty, but he had the uniform and he had the badge, persuade her to get into the back of his car because I think he said something like it was a breach of COVID lockdown rules or something like that. She got into the back of his car and then she was abducted, raped and murdered. It's a huge case over here, and it just absolutely shattered everyone's confidence in the police system. And again, there were the same sorts of questions. How is it possible that someone who was a police officer, and on this guy, there would have been checks on him, right? He had a license to carry firearms. He was, so as a you don't get that automatically as a police officer. He was a specialist officer that would have been in, past checks, past security clearance. And he was able to do something like that. It's just, and actually the case worsens, if you can imagine, because a few days earlier, he had been pulled up by his regulator for indecent exposure. So he'd effectively flashed. Not the same level of offense, but something that you might think, okay, this guy is transgressive, right? He's not observing social boundaries. There's something wrong with this person. And then a few days later, he goes and rapes and murders Sarah Everard. And there's a huge national outcry. And it leaves us thinking, how is it possible that we task people to police, to govern in our interests, and they're the worst predators? Like it's baffling. So I hear you. It's a completely unsatisfactory situation.
We need you in Jamaica.
Yeah.
The weather is great, by the way. The weather is great.
Much better than the UK. I mean, honestly, it's awful.
Yeah. Kate, I want to say thank you for this appearance. And like I mentioned in the email, it's the start of something. It's not the end of something, right? And so we look forward to having you back again. Our next speaker is up, and if you wanted to hear a little bit more about the Caribbean and resolve some of our problems, then you could just stay on board. I
would listen. I would absolutely love to. Unfortunately, I'm launching this charity in less than 20 days. So it's all hands on deck over here. So I'm going to have to jump off. But it was a real pleasure to be invited to this. It was a huge honor. Thank you so much. And
you're very welcome.
Keep up the good work, Kate.
Thanks to Rahana. Yeah.
See you.
The man of the hour, Mr. Daniel Silva. And we have worked with Dan before. Dan is a member, he's Haitian American, and he knows a little bit about the Caribbean. Sometimes I think he might be a super agent planted from somewhere to keep an eye on the Caribbean. So Dan, I want you to introduce yourself and give some background. And then our moderator is going to ask you some questions, and so as well as Jeffrey, who is our acting as our host for the day. He's behind the controls. So without further ado, go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Herb, for such a generous introduction. I'm Daniel Silva. I am the co-founder of DMS International, based in Silver Spring, Maryland. So we work in the Washington metro area and support the federal agencies, both on both sides, civilian and military. And that may be why Herb sort of insinuated that I could have been planted somewhere. So being aware of certain things, but that's not necessarily the case. My background is in technology. That's what academically I learned. But over time, in doing business, I went on to graduate studies in business administration and managing organizations, which sort of helped me at participating in the management of DMS International, which is about 27 years old organization now in the Washington, D.C. area. We have a technology side of the house, and we also have a professional development division within DMS, which led to the creation of what we call the DMS Academy. And the DMS Academy is mostly a leadership development organization, but with an emphasis on foresight and future studies. So at this stage, we are helping organizations at working with the future in mind, as opposed to being always being reactive on world events. And ever since the COVID pandemic, agencies other than the Defense Department have been looking closely at entering foresight into their strategic planning and strategic foresight. We have at least a good 25 world-renowned thought leaders in the foresight community that are with us as a faculty. And we are pretty much excited about this project because it's always talking about the future rather than the present. But the future, the chosen future, helps one at having a certain behavior in the present in order to achieve the chosen future. I think it's very important for us all, including the Caribbean. I think if somehow all of us from the Caribbean could sort of work with foresight, with the future in mind, we could have a much stronger approach to development, to security, to prosperity in general. So enough of myself, but as we were talking earlier this morning, Herb, you said, more or less the topic of the day would be more as the participation of the youth in gang activities throughout the Caribbean. But having a Haitian background, I sort of made a few points in talking about the why of youth joining gangs and particularly girls eventually. Well, the youth, and it's the same in most islands. I think somehow the joining of gangs comes from poverty, lack of educational and employment opportunities, a sense of hopelessness, particularly in Haiti, with the political instability creates a sense of hopelessness and frustration with the current situation. We can imagine that can lead a young person, whether having a high school diploma or even having joined the university, of not seeing any future. And you see why we are bringing the future into the conversation here, because without a future, there is no hope. Specifically as far as the girls joining gangs, there are a variety of factors that may lead young girls to join gangs in Haiti, for example, and in Jamaica would be the same. It's poverty, like we said, lack of opportunity, and this sense of hopelessness. However, there are challenges for gang involvement to prevent and mitigate their involvement. You have what you call gender-based violence and discrimination, which is girls and young women in Haiti may experience high levels of gender-based violence. Those guys, they incite those girls at joining them and have sexual harassments and things of that nature. So which can leave them feeling unsafe and vulnerable. So as we said, it includes sexual harassment, assault, exploitation, as well as discrimination in education, in employment, because, you know, men are still the quicker chosen elements in this. So I would say addressing gender-based violence and discrimination is a critical component of preventing and mitigating girls' involvement in gangs. As far as the lack of educational and employment opportunities, it's the same. It's gender-based. So they face greater barriers for education and employment than boys, which can limit their options for economic and social advancement. So improving access to education and training opportunities, as well as promoting policies that support girls' participation in the workforce, can help mitigate the factors that drive girls towards gang involvement. So also family and community breakdown. You know, lots of kids in Haiti were born out of wedlock, and the two parents sort of left them in the streets. So you can imagine how that person grew up without, you know, there is no sense of family or community. So those that come from broken homes and unstable communities like Cité Soleil and those other communities, they are susceptible to gang involvement as a way to find a sense of belonging or support. So strengthening families and communities through targeted interventions such as parenting education, family counseling, and community building programs could help reduce the risk of gang involvement of girls. Those are very important elements for not only the challenges, but how that could be resolved in terms of the policy and programs, both governmental and non-governmental organizations can participate at such. Also, the lack of access to healthcare. Girls in the Caribbean, particularly Haiti here, they face a number of health challenges that put them at risk of gang involvement. These may include high rates of malnutrition, poor reproductive health outcomes, and limited access to healthcare services. Addressing these health challenges and improving access to healthcare services can help improve girls' overall well-being and reduce their vulnerability to gang involvement. Lastly, I would say lack of social support. Those things are really getting girls to, you know, by hopelessness, get themselves involved in gang organizations. So girls that lack strong social networks may be more susceptible to gang involvement as a way to find a sense of belonging or support. So providing those girls with access to positive role models, mentorship programs, and other forms of social support could help reduce their risk of gang involvement. So those are the sort of key points that not only are the challenges for girls living in such communities, but, you know, the remedies for you know, getting them out of that a circle, vicious circle. So those would be the points that I wanted to make, open for discussions and questions. The floor is yours. I don't hear you.
Thank
Unmute
you
your
very
mic.
much. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. All
Yes.
right. What you referred to as part of the opening, are you conducting a STEM or what referred to now as STEAM program that could be extended to the islands? Because we have a representative here on the program. I was looking for Stafford. I know he was driving his car, so it seems like he dropped off. But is that in essence what you're referring to, a STEM type program that these kids could learn from?
Well, no, not STEM, because STEM is when you're already somehow involved in an institution and they are enforcing mathematics and better ways to learn and overcome challenges in terms of learning. What we are addressing here is more policies that can recruit girls or boys for that matter into more positive environments so that they can become better persons. So it's a multi-institutional infrastructure that needs to be put in place, and not in silos, but rather one related to the other with a well-rounded program that would lead the person to really have access to, as we said, community-related programs, healthcare, training and education for them to be independent of gangs, things of that nature. Not well, the STEM part comes from when you want to draw some that are smarter or that want to be smarter. That could be within those institutions. But the first and foremost is to get the person to feel a sense of belonging to something positive rather than a sense of looking for gangs to feel that they belong to something.
Okay. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to ask our moderator, Mr. Will Rattigan. If you remember Will, he's former FBI supervisor, agent in charge, as well as an attorney. So go ahead, Will.
Yeah, Daniel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You probably don't remember me, but I was on a panel, I think it was last year or the year before. Yeah, and I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation because you talked about the conditions in Haiti, and I had no clue. And the things that I thought I knew, you debunked them. And so I walked away from that presentation learning a hell of a lot more than I thought I would have. Because I came here to give you grief, but instead I walked away learning. So,
well, you know, that's the purpose of this
yeah.
here, right?
Well, that was good. So good to see you again. Let me ask you this. You mentioned hopelessness, frustration, and the deteriorating political situation. You talked about schools and that we needed, at least in Haiti, but it's not just Haiti, it's across the Caribbean, to improve access to training opportunities. You talked about poverty, lack of opportunities, gender-based violence, discrimination, the family breakdown, family and the community breakdown, lack of healthcare, resulting in malnutrition. And you know, if the child is malnutrition, it's difficult to learn. Lack of social support. Now, it sounds to me like all gloom and doom. You know, it sounds like we're in this mess. And I'm sitting here thinking, how do we get out of this? We can use Haiti or Jamaica, for example, right? And we said, well, look, the government is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. The family is deteriorating. They see gangs as an alternative, as an extension of their family members, because they have a sense of belonging there. They have a sense of worth. They have a sense of value. And also the gangs provide a safe haven for them, because the gangs are involved in all kinds of criminal activity, and to a large degree, they share the spoils. So that's their mother, that's their father, that's where they're getting their mother's milk. That's everything to them. I say all of that to say this. is it beyond fixing? And if it's not, specifically, what kind of hard, specific solutions you have that you can point to and say, this is what we need to do specifically to fix this issue?
Well, thank you, Will, for the question. It's a challenging one. As we in each of the points, the lack of community support and the healthcare area and the education, we sort of said what could be done in order to help those people get out of this vicious circle. It's in the doing that the challenge is. And I would think, as far as the Caribbean is concerned, within CARICOM, I feel that we lack somehow the creation and the attention to such multinational task force in those particular subjects, which are the challenges of the day for CARICOM, for all the islands, because what we just enunciated here seem to be addressed to all of the islands, so it's not a one eye, some worse than others. However, and those that have not been affected will be affected in the years to come. So somehow we are all in that boat. And if we are looking into, let's say, well, what does CARICOM 2040 should look like? And we want, better people, more productive, and sort of contributing to the prosperity of CARICOM, we would get back in creating those people today. So we would try to touch on those points in a multinational task force format, whereby we would sort of standardize those efforts so that Haiti is not making an effort on his way, and Jamaica is making another one, and Barbados is, and they all seem to be addressing the same issues. So why don't we fusion those types of efforts at the CARICOM level and standardize the delivery of with all the nuances of cultural differences, of course, but at least we would have had something at the top that can be followed and reported on over the years, because this is not something that will be a one-day activity. So somehow they become part of our business process.
But the thing is that, let's take Haiti for example. It has observer status in CARICOM, I believe, or is it? It is a member. It's a full member.
Full member.
All right, good. Well, that being the case, let's talk about CARICOM then. We have a responsibility to each other in this region. We pledge that. Yet, we find that only recently, I think it was like a few weeks ago, that they had a CARICOM session, I think it was in the Bahamas or Cayman, to talk about the Haitian issue, even though this issue has been boiling forever and ever. And the thing is, we sat back and we said, okay, what is Canada going to do? What is the US going to do? And nobody ever said, what are we going to do? Because Haiti is us.
Yeah.
We're one.
Yes.
What are your feelings about that we look elsewhere before we look inwards?
Well, this is a CARICOM issue, really, to be addressing it to the larger international communities, and maybe it's done on purpose in terms of always have to check in before we take any initiative. That I don't know. But I think positive initiatives should not necessarily need to be checked in details before it gets the green light, because it's for America's prosperity as a whole, because the Caribbean belongs to the Americas, at least regionally speaking. So, anything that's done within the frame of the Americas and that, is not going into any geopolitical challenges or anything like that, should be okay, and somehow I think we would be much stronger. I advocate for a stronger CARICOM at this point, very much so, both in terms of those youth, the gang issue, and even in terms of border security. We seem to sort of, everyone is managing their own little borders and things like that. It's the same border if we look at it in a more Caribbean way, and somehow standardize some of those processes, because we are small enough and big. When we are together, we are big, to have, you know, sort of common policies in certain critical areas that are blocking us from moving toward prosperity.
Let me ask you this last question before, and I know Jeffrey wants to ask you a couple of questions. Given the number of gangs in Haiti, and I could say the same thing for Jamaica, because Jamaica has over 200. Given the number of gangs, given the firepower that they have, given the breakdown of the central government to adequately police these gangs, given the attraction, because the school system has failed many of these children, and so now they become a resource pool for the gangs, given the fact that having a gang presence actually helps. It's good business for some of the people, you know, the people at the top, because they can use these gang members to do their dirty deeds. Given all of this, what's your forecast for Haiti, Jamaica, and the rest of the Caribbean in light of these deficiencies, in light of these terrible conditions?
That is an excellent question, which touches the first point I made about DMS International and its foresight education in terms of governance, in terms of anticipatory governance, because the question you just posed and asked is an anticipatory look at the islands, right? So if we don't go through the exercise of looking at what is the governance in 10, 15 years, you know, we won't have, we want the positive elements of CARICOM or each of the islands will not have a sense. It will just be reacting and continue to say that we don't have the funds to create all those things I just mentioned as far as education and healthcare. We don't have the budget for it, etc. So we'll just keep on reacting, and people that are hopeless will continue to say, well, I understand, but I don't have a lot of time for myself to eat and getting recognized as somebody important in the community, because some gang members, they just join the gangs to become something, right? To be a chief, you know, it's a mentality. So if we cannot somehow draw those people into being a chief, but in a more positive light, they will continue to, because creating a gang is nothing extraordinary. They call it in Haiti base, meaning the base. It's a base, meaning in your neighborhood, you see that there is a sort of a flooding activity going on, and all of a sudden a guy acquires a 9mm at first. Well, with that 9mm, the ladies start joining him. He conquers ladies much easier than the other guys. So a couple of other guys say, well, you know, if I have a 9mm also, I'll be, you know, the girls. So it's very instinctive, very simple kinds of things. And food and putting pressure on other people. I don't hear you, Will.
You know what? It sounds to me like I'm gonna have to leave soon, because they had the early dismissal and my wife is gone and the school just called, my kid is there. But before I go, I want to ask you this. It sounds to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, sounds like you're saying to me, like, look, with everything that's going on and the fact that our CARICOM seems to be dysfunctional in some aspects, is it every man for himself? Because if it's every man for himself, we're doomed. Because like you said before, whatever happens in one country, you may think your country is safe now and that it's insulated from everything, but it's going to affect you because we're only like a few hundred miles from each other. You know what I mean? We just have a short plane ride away.
Of course. And all of us continue to receive deportees from Canada, from the US. We continue to, everybody's getting its own share of the thing that actually creating strong gangs, well armed, knowing the traffic flow of arms and munitions and the whole work. So nobody is immune. Somebody might get the lead right now, but everyone is part of this.
Yeah. Hey, listen. Daniel, it's been great talking to you. Herb, I apologize, man. I just got a phone call from school and I thought my wife went to pick up Seth, but she's somewhere else and they let him out an hour and 20 minutes ago. And
okay,
and he's just sitting there. So
yeah,
my apologies to you and Jeffrey and the rest of the guests.
And they having problems trying to log in. Maybe you can talk to him on the way out there. See if they're. I gave him the alternative login information.
All right, the school is not too far away, so I think I'll be back before the program ends.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. No problem.
All right.
Thanks, Jeffrey. You're
yes. Question I want to have asked for you: do you believe that successful government has put a blind eye to the gun trafficking throughout the Caribbean? And successful government in Haiti has created an animosity in a sense wherein they contribute to what is going on in Haiti.
I think so. I would not say just, politicians.
Yes.
Right? Because one of the ways that gangs got created, the strongest one, was a politician running for office. He sort of, through money and connections, has a few M16 and a few 9mm. He starts with that, and he calls those guys his security apparatus, which people seem to say, he needs one. He needs a few guys. But somehow, after the election, this guy passes, he becomes a congressperson or a senator. But the security guy either becomes officially his security or they get apart. The guy lives with the gun, right? He lives with that M16. And whenever he goes into his own neighborhood, now that he has an M16, he starts creating an infrastructure for himself based on the M16. Right? So the senator goes, and very often they remain in contact because they are in the campaign together, right? So that senator now, having immunity and access to free customs and things like that, can order a couple of other M16 because now he has the authority for doing it. So now he has security around him that have M16. So are we counting the M16s that are coming around? And when the security apparatus drops this senator at night, he goes home with the M16, right? So he has an influence in his neighborhood with his M16 and even now a 4x4 vehicle. So he's becoming somebody that calls for respect because he's armed, he has a vehicle, and he seems to have money as well, for survival kinds of things. So things are getting better at home. He's getting a mistress. She's doing okay also. Maybe his kids go to another type of school. So things are changing. So if I was a kid there, I would say, oh, that's the way that I need to do in order to become somebody.
Yes.
Right?
Do you believe that throughout the Caribbean, because whatever happened in Haiti, because you can travel by boat from Haiti and within minutes you reach the point of Port Antonio in Jamaica. Have a red stripe bear and go back to Haiti. Do you believe that the government of successful Caribbean countries, or the government of Caribbean countries, has put a blind eye to what is going on in Haiti? Now, because it is spilling over into their country, they are just being hypocritical by saying we have to do something.
Before we go to the governments of the Caribbean, we have to go to the governments of the northern countries as well.
Yes.
Because I was a part of a counter-narcotics joint force as a technology person to collect information and reporting and things of that nature. And one of the things, and I'm talking about late 80s, that's when they started flooding the islands, because we had just come out of the dictatorship, which was very tight. You, as a Haitian, you had to get a visa in New York, Miami, etc. Go to the consulate to get a visa to go to Haiti under the dictatorship. So once the flood opened, well, oh no, how can you be Haitians and need a visa to go back home? So the flood of all sorts of people started going back, including the Hmong people, right? So, and all of a sudden, now both the US and Canada started sending deportees, meaning the guy that was condemned for life for major crimes, those guys, those countries didn't want to have those guys and feeding them for life. So they just put them on a plane and sent them back to their countries. And we don't care anymore. That's no longer our business because now they are back home. And we don't even want to know what they did with them when they got back home. But these guys have a gang mentality already because there are gang members within those big countries. And some of them didn't even speak Creole or French, so they spoke English, in fact. And they had a lifestyle that kind of could attract a young guy because he looks like, you know, he can get an afro and get dressed some way differently, and he manipulates 9mm easily, and, you know, that kind of thing. And he has friends in the diaspora that he is conversing with, etc., etc. So, you know, those governments, we never had really an agreement on how we're going to manage this whole deportee thing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, let me ask you this question here. The Jamaican government, headed by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, made a statement in the Jamaican parliament that Jamaica stands ready to help Haiti. At one point, he said that the Jamaican Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force are on standby to go into Haiti. I was saying to myself, and I think I said it to Herb and other people, if Haiti have a dysfunctional government, Jamaica is in the same situation, or, well, getting there, because I keep on saying that Jamaica is knocking behind Haiti's back door. With what is going on in Jamaica now, with our security forces stretched south in, you think it's a good idea for the Prime Minister of Jamaica to tell the people of Jamaica that Jamaican law enforcement and police and so forth will be going into Haiti to assist when we are having major problem in our country? And before you answer that, and also, if we go on Haiti's soil, who's going to go with us who speak Creole? And if Haiti have a dysfunctional government where there's no senator, where we have an acting prime minister, acting president, wouldn't that be concern as an act of invasion or act of war? If a military force going there on the soil?
That would be a major mistake, I would think. Because, you know, they would, once they are on the ground, they would meet all sorts of challenges. Because, you know, people make you think that if you go down to Haiti, you'll only be fighting gangs. And that's true in the first phase. But while you're there, if all of a sudden some groups that were not necessarily part of gangs start, igniting nationalistic sentiments, your soldiers are trapped into something that was not part of the equation when you were first coming. You know what I mean? So that is a precaution that has to be taken into account. Second of all, I think some governments Mama said it also a few months before Prime Minister Rollins said it, but I think they are being enticed, and I'm not criticizing US, I'm a very US, Canada type of person, most US, but aren't they being, solicited to become subcontractors to something that they don't want to do? They being Canada said they don't have that kind of force, okay? So why is Jamaica offering itself for doing a job that Canada says they cannot do? Isn't that, is it some in a closed door conversation in saying, guys, if I pay you and I pay your soldiers, would you be willing to go and even put some profit into it? Because, now all stuff deal with subcontracting quite a bit in this new world that we are living in. So, but we don't know, we are not in the room for that conversation of saying, oh, don't worry, we'll provide the logistics. Your soldiers will get $3,000 a month, which is way higher than what they are getting right now, and then blah, blah, blah. That's what gives you MINUSTA, which was the United Nations mission that lasted 14 years in Haiti between 2004 through 2018, right? It's because the guy from Nepal or Bangladesh was all of a sudden, he had $4,000 a month on him. And he didn't have to pay for food. And he didn't even have a major war in his hands. So he was happy that he could spend years earning good money. And when you go back, you can build a nice little home and, things go well. I call that subcontracting, being a business person. So because some major power said that we don't have the time for that stuff, but I can recruit you to, and we'll pay, way, because we are more expensive if we send our own people.
Yeah, because a lot of Jamaicans are saying the Jamaican Defense Force is stretched thin. Because every minute you hear the Prime Minister put out a illegal, if I may say this, state of emergency. SO here, SO here, SO zoo, za. And he's going to try and protect the people of Jamaica. When gunmen gunning down everybody in the streets day by day, and you are going to send Jamaica Defense Force into Haiti, where, I think, yes, it is good to help our neighbors. But I grew up in a home where you said you dance a yard before you go abroad. So, Herb?
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. I know the last group that we heard from, or we heard of, was this Montana group. Are you familiar with them?
Yes.
Okay, so and they are linked heavily with the Canadians, who the US is pushing to get involved, but that hasn't happened yet. You think that anything is going to come to fruition with that?
Well, this is a group that's asking like a tabula rasa type of situation, right, whereby we don't want the current prime minister, and we're going to go into court for Petro-Caribe, and we'll do this, and we need at least 3 years to really clean up and it's beautiful, it's idealistic.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger countries feel like, hey, that's going to cost me. I know you're going to come to me when this thing starts becoming expensive.
Gotcha.
Even though you sound like you have a good faith and you have a mind, a structure for, getting a strong country, You know, but these are nice, idealistic things that are coming out of people that are not managing power, say, and but when they go into the position, then all of a sudden find out how things are difficult. So what they do at that point, they turn to the bigger countries and say, oh, we didn't know that things were so difficult. So can you help me in this? And can you send me more security? You know, I was, you know, blaming the other guy when he was asking for United Nations to have troops. And I said that it was not good. I think it was a good idea. Now, you know, the big countries are saying, well, you know, why did I have to change government just for you to come and tell me the same thing that the other guy was saying?
Right. I got you.
You see what I mean? I'm not, you know, I'm not for one or the other, but, you know, there is a sense of responsibility that sometimes when you're out and discussing and saying that things are not working well, but you haven't tested the food.
Okay. Well, Dan, look, I appreciate it. You have been a wealth of knowledge, especially with Haiti. And you touched on Jamaica and the islands briefly, but we welcome it. And look, don't forget, June is Caribbean American month. So we're going to have to think of something creative for the month of June. That's not too far off. So look, you're welcome to stay and ask our next guest questions as a member of the Crime and Security Committee panel. So without further ado, this gentleman who seems to be one of the smarter guys up in Canada, he's down here to tell us how himself and the Canadian government is going to handle this. So without further ado, and he's smiling too, Dr. Justine Pierre. Welcome to the set, Doctor. And I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. And the floor is yours, Doc.
Good afternoon. Well, it's afternoon where I am now, so I'll say good afternoon, everyone. Is everyone hearing me?
Yeah, everybody, we're hearing you now. Yeah.
Oh, good. I am Justine Pierre. We are a research firm. We are from Toronto. We are basically in the field of labor markets, skills, TVET, and research. Our firm is called Dunn Pierre Barnett and Company, Canada Limited, and our firm we collect data. So we have maybe one of the larger databases of Black people around the world. In about 120 countries, we collect data on the Black diaspora. And as Mr. Herbert said, that from 2014 to 2022, we conducted about 14 major studies in the Caribbean region. One was starting off with the migration survey of the Turks and Caicos, 2016, where we looked at the Haitian the routes from Haiti to Turks and Caicos. So we did that. We also did the Turks and Caicos labor market needs assessment in 2017. We did the PAHO migration survey, which encompassed the 28 countries in the region. We did that, and in 2019-2020, we conducted the CARIFORM human trafficking study in the Caribbean region, and in 2020, we looked at the migration, the Venezuelan routes, the human trafficking routes from Venezuela into the Northern Caribbean. So we looked at the 43 routes that were designed or used by Venezuelan migrants. So with that, we have been resource persons for, as you mentioned, the Canadian embassies, the British High Commissioner in Trinidad and Tobago, U.S. State Department, and many of the embassies and stuff reach out to us and we sort of provide intelligence and advice on the issues of relating to human trafficking in the Caribbean region. So this is where we are at, as an introduction. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, I'll be more than willing to answer if in my capacity as a researcher.
Okay. Were you able to hear any of the earlier presentations?
I just got the Mr. Silva's presentation. I heard some of his presentation. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Now he spoke to the female situation in Haiti.
Yes.
Even when there was a government in place, was it ever good? And what is needed? We know what's needed to stabilize Haiti, but is there any suggestions you could make about the females safeguarding or empowering themselves in this current climate in Haiti?
Okay, then. Well, that's a very interesting question. I think that I just look at it in terms of the type of data we have. We know that Haiti, there's a lot of challenges in terms of how women are viewed, how women are depicted in this society. There isn't enough power given to a woman, and so I think that the situation now would be a little more challenging for women in Haiti. However, we have to look at some of the causes of this, and we realize obviously there's internal conflict, and we have to find in my opinion, that is their best way to sort of bring everyone together, both the military, both the civil society, and to an extent the international community. I think that without the international community, it will be very difficult for Haiti to the situation to change in Haiti. We also need, well, CARICOM, as at least CARICOM should play some type of presence there, and so people have to look at someone. You know, everyone, the situation has been very, very difficult in Haiti because every attempt has failed. So we have to know, everybody either has to come to the table and decide what is best. And from my opinion, I believe that we need to have more data. But secondly, we believe that the persons have to come. There's the need to have some type of presence in Haiti so that it can calm their fighting. If there is a presence in Haiti, I believe, in my opinion, the fighting would subside.
Now, the Caribbean, CARICOM itself, the population, I think it's roughly 19 million. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
And how many does Haiti have?
I think Haiti has about 11 or 15 million. I can check, but I think
it's more on the 11 million side.
Yes, so around 11 million. So Haiti has the highest percentage. I mean, in terms of persons within their region. We believe that at this point in time, CARICOM and its forces, CARICOM, cannot make any impact into the Caribbean region, because the Haitians they do not value most of the Caribbean countries. You know, the situation in Grenada, where they are deporting Haitians from the country. So most persons cannot, they do not have the respect, maybe, or of CARICOM, or not to say that it is a bad way, but if there are military presence in Haiti, we think that from CARICOM member states, it wouldn't stop the fighting. I think that if there are other persons on the ground, I think that will have an impact, because I think that there's in certain military forces, these people have a better reputation than, let's say, persons, military, from CARICOM.
Okay, I see our moderator is back, Will Rattigan. Will, you have anything? I know Dan certainly has questions about some of the statistics that he's found within the Haitian area, but he has statistics on the entire Caribbean. I believe it's 1 million square miles. Am I correct, Doc?
Yes. Well, yeah. Well, as I said, the Caribbean as a whole, they have a lot of challenges in the Caribbean region. As I said, we have about 7,000 islands in the Caribbean, 1.5 million, 1 million square miles. There is no central government in the Caribbean region. The challenge we have the French government in somewhere, the British government, the Dutch government, the Spanish government, all have different agendas in the Caribbean region. There are over 25 different languages there, 13 sovereign states. There are over maybe just 300 islands in Venezuela alone, or 300 or 315 in Guyana. So it's very difficult to govern the Caribbean. You have very weak legislation. There is limited funding for resources or research. Okay, and the Caribbean, what makes the Caribbean difficult again is this whole issue of sex tourism. You have a high percentage of sex tourism. In our human trafficking study, we found about 83 brothels, with one of some of the largest brothels in the world at that time was concentrated in the Caribbean. We have also in the Caribbean very high demand for sex, not only from foreigners but from the natives, from the local. In the region again, we see that sexual violence against women is seen as a form of entertainment, and that shows the whole issue of respect. How do we value women in the Caribbean region? Again, we also have a very low apprehension rate. If people commit crime, most people are not being brought to the law. But we also look at the bigger picture in the region here. Like, we have about 640 million people. We're 8% of the world's population, but we have about 33% of all global crime in the Caribbean region here. So we definitely have some challenges, and we do not know how it will be how we can govern ourselves. But something has to happen in the Caribbean region.
Okay, Mr. Moderator.
You're muted, sir.
Will, you're muted.
You're muted.
I don't know that happened. Technology. Dr. Pierre, welcome, sir, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Forgive me, I normally show respect to my elders and my teachers, but I had to run out and get my son, so I had to take my jacket off, so forgive me, sir.
That's okay. That's
all right. Listen, you've done extensive research in this region, and you talk about the labor market. You talk about the fact that there's no central government. You talk about how difficult it is to govern because of the different languages, different culture, different historical perspectives. And then you talk about, and I found this stat to be interesting, that we comprise 8% of the global population, but 33% of the violent crimes you can attribute it to this region.
Yes.
Now, given all of this, what is the greatest threat? If you could point your finger and say, this is the greatest threat facing the Caribbean, what would that be? And then also, how do we address that threat? How do we take it? How do we manage it? How do we get it under control, if it's possible to do that?
Right. Well, that's a very it's a very loaded question. For example, so in 2017 and 18, we conducted the PAHO study. For example, the PAHO study, we interacted with about 25,000 subjects, people from 28 countries. So from Suriname, French Guiana, right up to Belize. We went to Jamaica. We went to Trinidad, all the countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ask, we collecting data. Just simple things like data. How many hospitals you have? How many persons are sick? We want to get how many beds you have. What's your bed to patient ratio, etc., etc., etc. Okay, simple enterprise data. And we found that throughout our study, the data gatherer has always been careful and always been afraid to provide data. So data in the Caribbean is political. So I think that the biggest threat to the Caribbean is either politics or corruption. Because, so for example, we almost, to ask persons, just tell me, how many persons got sick? How many persons had high hypertension? Or what's your hypertension rate? Simple questions. People are afraid to give honest answer because some minister, because some person who do, if I tell you, they will look bad. The government may lose power just because of data. And that's the biggest challenge I have. The biggest problem is that people do not have enough respect for data. And the reason why, either they are afraid, either they might be issues with corruption, and last, also, we do not have enough respect for statistics. We talk one side how things are great, but in actuality, and we saw that almost in every country, with the exception of Guyana, okay, they were able to provide data to us, okay, easy, okay. The Caribbean Court of Justice hired us to do what is called a big survey by the name, it's called pre-trial detention. We look at all the persons who are incarcerated in the region, and all these simple things like it is public information in Canada. How many people got arrested? What you got arrested for? Public information. It is hard for us in the region here to willingly give these data up. So I think that it is very challenging for us in terms of in order for us to progress, because we don't have so for example, we are now looking to do a centralized database. So we collect data. So we have maybe almost everyone, most people who are in the, let's say from 1970 to let's say 2020. So we have data on most people in the Caribbean, most people in the English speaking Caribbean. What we have done, we have downloaded all of the databases, all of the voters registration lists. So we have people from the voters registration list. We'll have that down. We will download it into the database. And what we'll do now, we will use Google or your GPS, because your yellow pages, white pages have every information about you, and just we can find people where they are. Anybody, most people are on social media, and if you're on social media, it's obviously easy to get to you, okay? And because every country has a pool, so you could just look at the social media feed, see when people are using data.
That's my wife.
So it's very easy. But the challenge we have.
I got you. Is the picture okay on your side?
Sorry about that, Ambassador. Mute your mic, Ambassador. Sorry, you're coming over. And mute your mic for me, please. We do apologize about that, Dr. Pierre.
Yes. So sorry about that. I'm almost finished. So the whole issue of data. So data has to be coordinated. The more need of the sharing of data, the CARICOM impasse should play a major. It should be the platform, so that what we can now use, for example, there were some issues with human trafficking in Trinidad. There was a couple of persons in the region had reached out to us. So what we're trying to now develop a profile, a human trafficking profile. Who is a human trafficker? And we do not have a scientific profile of such person, because everybody has data. Everybody is afraid to share data. Everybody believes that if I tell you what is going wrong in my country, I will look bad. And that's what I think is needed, the sharing of data.
Well, look, I see we have the ambassador from Interpol ambassador for the Turn Back Crime Program on the line, and we have Stafford, and we have Jeffrey, and we have Daniel, and we have Herb. So I'll just ask you one question and yield to my fellow panelists. And the question is this: how confident, given the difficulty, right, given the challenge of collecting all of this data so that you can present an adequate or an accurate picture of what's going on in the region and in those countries individually, how confident are you in the information that you have provided as a result of, and it sounds like it's a shortcoming, you know, a challenge in terms of getting information accurate, getting information in some instances, any information regarding certain topics from certain countries. How accurate are you in the conclusion of your study of the study?
That's a very, very good question. We're accurate, for example. So we have a team in Venezuela. So I think a couple last year, sometime this year, we met with the U.S. State Department. We met with other organizations. So we have a team. So we have a team in Venezuela. So we can monitor it. We can monitor it. We can see what is taking place. So we also have collect the white pages, the yellow pages. We also collect the voters registration. So all the voters registration in every country is in the database. Last year we did, and so we were a company consulted us to determine the Grenada elections, June 2023. So we came in and we did an analysis on the Grenada election. We went on the ground, we conducted surveys, but we also used our artificial intelligence algorithms, and we were able to predict the election. Okay, 9 to 6 predict the election, but we also were able to predict who will win and almost how much they will win by. So it's the data is there. The data is there, and the funny thing about crime, most criminals, it's easier now because most criminals have cell phones. Most criminals have an email address. So with regard to human trafficking, for example, there are 17 major human trafficking websites that are used within the Caribbean. Human trafficking is a people business. So you could go after it, go after them, and we had in February. We presented in Trinidad in the Freedom from Slavery, and what we found out is that the emphasis in the region, for example, I'm speaking for human trafficking, for example, is focused on the victims. The United Nations, the UN, the United Nations Department of Drugs and Crime, everyone in the Caribbean is focusing on the victim, is victim centered. But we said no, this is a wrong approach. But if you have to stop human trafficking, you have to focus on the trafficker, because there are less traffickers than there are victims. If you want to stop the one crime or terrorism, you go after the terrorists. If you want to go stop gang violence, you go after the gang leaders and the gangs. So if you want to stop human trafficking, you go after the trafficking. They are traffickers. And what we were able to do is to just develop intelligence. Everyone has an email address. Everyone uses cell phone. Everyone has a Facebook, and everyone has social media. Every criminal has a social media posting, and you just go after it, because if anyone has the internet data is there, and it's just having intelligence to go after it. And our alliance now with the Liver Fund. So the Liver Fund is a nonprofit organization in the United States, and they have the largest database of human traffickers in the United States. So the combination between their database and our database would be seamless.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So Herb, unmute your mic for me, Mr. Herb.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rattigan. Are there any other questions from members of the audience for Dr. Pierre about crime statistics in the Caribbean? If none, all right. So, Dr. Pierre, I want to thank you again for your stalwart appearances as usual. And I know you held the fort for another stalwart who had a very hard time getting on board. Why I believe it was his phone, his wife's phone works. We always buy our wives the better phone, don't we? We want them to be safe and be able to call us. And you know, again, thanks, Dr. Pierre. And without further ado, Dr. Pierre, believe it or not, Ambassador, Dr. Pierre, I believe, worked in South Africa and South African issues before. I don't know why you two guys, if you two guys know each other, I've seen each other before. But without further ado, I'm going to allow you to take the floor, and because we're running behind, and do your intro and talk about, you know, crime and criminality from the Interpol perspective.
Thank you, and good evening or good afternoon to yourself. That side from my side here, it's in the evening. It's about 2000 hours now. I'm happy to be joining you. Can you hear me, App? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you loud and
we can hear you.
Yeah.
Loud and clear. I needed to talk about children's rights and the violation of those rights, and most importantly, from my perspective, would be criminalizing the violation of the children's rights. I have no intention to preach to the converted, but I have some few critical steps to share with you and formulate a background. One of those things that would want us to focus our attention on as the people of the world would be the establishment of the Children's Rights Charter on the 20th November 1989. 30 years or so ago, world leaders committed to adopting this United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. This international agreement was panel beaten together to ensure that children remain children and they have the right to be children at a certain age. Most widely human rights is the most widely human rights treaty transforming the lives of children around the world. Most ratified treaty transforming the rights of children and as well as the lives of the children around the world. This convention has 54 articles. Articles 43 and 54 about how adults and governments should work together to make sure that all children get their rights respected and their rights supported by the adult community as well as governments of the world. In South Africa, where I am, we have the Children's Protection Week coming through on May the 29th, 2023, stretching up to June the 5th, 2023. Is the whole week where awareness is raised as prescribed in the Constitution of South Africa relating to the rights of children. The children's rights in South Africa prescribe that every child is entitled to the following: a name and a nationality, family care or appropriate alternative care, basic nutrition, shelter, health care and social services, protection from neglect, malnutrition and abuse, protection from exploitative labor services, including work-on services that are inappropriate. The last being protection from being used in armed conflict and protection during the times of armed conflict. This is the South African scenario around the rights of children. Hence, we have the Child Protection Week, which will start on the 29th of May 2023 to June the 5th, 2023. This Child Protection Week is given birth to by the Child Act number 38 of 2005. Let us look at the children in armed conflict worldwide. 250 million girls and boys live in areas where there is conflict, including what is happening in Haiti now, as well as what is happening in Ukraine. There are 6 violations of children's rights that must be monitored, that must be reported on, that must be focused on, so that we ensure that children remain safe as children and they are secure, and children have the right to be children and live in an environment that is free from conflict. What are these 6 violations that we must ensure, that we must guard against? Killing and maiming of children is one of the grave violations of the children's rights. Recruitment and use of children as soldiers is one of those critical violations that we must all stand up for and ensure that children are not used as soldiers in any conflict in all parts of the world. I'm not sure if children in the Ukraine are used as soldiers, but you and I know that in Uganda, in Somalia, 1,600 children were forced to become members of Al-Shabaab in the fight against government for reasons best known to Al-Shabaab, as well as ISIS in other parts of the world, where children must never be used as children. The third of those 6 grave violations would be sexual violence against children during conflict and in areas where there is no conflict, but where children are violated sexually. Abduction of children is one of those grave violations that we must guard against. Attack against schools and hospitals is a grave violation for children in any part of the world. Denial of humanitarian access for children is a serious violation of the children's rights. All this information is found in Children and Armed Conflict by the Office of the Special Representative on behalf of the Secretary General of the United Nations. Let me quickly go into the situation in the CARICOM area, where you have conflict going on in Haiti. Adding on to the woes would be the earthquake and all other normal day-to-day challenges. The population of Haiti is 11.7 million, and the source of this information is worldometer.info. Let me quickly project you into the forecast for the population in Haiti. It is forecasted that by 2025, the population of Haiti will be 12.088 million. By 2030, the population of Haiti would be 12.733 million. By 2040, the population of Haiti is forecasted to be 13.915 million people. By 2050, there will be 14.877 million people in Haiti. Now, why are we bringing these projections on in this little discussion and in these points that we are discussing, given the rights of children as well as the violation of those children that you and I have to act against? It is because children formulate a huge chunk of the people of the population of Haiti. Children formulate a huge chunk of the population of Ukraine. It is against that background that the United Nations Office on the Rights of Children is beefed up by the ordinary men in the street, by men like you and I, who have a serious responsibility to create a safe and a secure environment for children. There are about 1.6 million people, children in Haiti, who need to be reached as you and I speak now in 2023, as a result of the conflict that has happened and as a result of the earthquake that struck Haiti a few weeks or a month or so ago. It is against the background that you and I, when we discuss the rights of children and ensure that children are safe and ensure that the rights of these children are not violated, and understand what are the critical violations that we must throw our body at as adults in ensuring that we protect our children with life and limb, and joining law enforcement agencies and all those other non-governmental organizations in the world that espouses are proponents of the children's rights, safety and security worldwide. Let me indicate to you that in the event where children are abducted, one of the things that happens would be those children would be abducted for human trafficking purposes, where they are going to be used in the farms, like the ones that were found in the Northwest Province in South Africa. Those little children between the age of 8 years and 16 years of age were abducted from Malawi right through South Africa into one of the provinces called Northwest. And the police, the South African police services, and other law enforcement agencies worldwide were quick to identify the movement of those abducted children until into South Africa, and rescuing them from those predators that were going to sell them in the farmland, so that they can be farmhands, as you say in America, they can be farmhands, and they can be used for farming purposes exploitatively, so as well as sexual objects, as well as being forced into prostitution for those who traffic them from Malawi into South Africa. I'm not sure up to this far whether you want to ask questions, or should I finalize the presentation and the little presentation, so that we can go into a discussion mode, so that we can discuss and respond in detail, given the questions that will be coming from yourself, Ep, and all of you who are sitting in on this discussion.
The presentation, if you want to touch on the Turn Back Crime Initiative and how that may assist our Caribbean neighbors, would be a good thing also. But at the same time, if you want to go ahead and finalize, then I'll turn it over to our good friend Will Rattigan as the moderator.
Yes, as moderator, I want to exercise my right here and ask you a question, Ambassador. By the way, welcome. I was looking at some stats here and some information regarding children's human rights, and I saw where it says about 2.3 billion children. There are about 2.3 billion children in the world, and they make up nearly a third. That's nearly a third of the total human population.
Yes, sir.
And it says, whatever their age, all children have human rights, just as adults do. This includes the right to speak out and express opinions, as well as rights to equality, health, education, a clean environment, a safe place to live, and protection from all kinds of harm. And it says children's rights are enshrined in the 1989 United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the most ratified human rights treaty in the world. Now, having said that, children must rely on adults for the nurture and guidance they need to grow towards independence. And they say such nurture is ideally found from adults in children's families, but when primary adult caregivers cannot meet children's needs, it is up to the state as a primary duty bearer to find an alternative in the best interest of the child. Now, regarding the 250 million children who live in conflict areas and their involvement, it would appear as if there is no state, so to speak, that's looking out for the best interests of the children involved. What's your solution to that?
One of the things that would lead to the state not focusing its attention and energies on those 250 million children, just using them as an example, would be the corrupt and rotten and satanic officials who are members of the state or the leadership in the state that benefit from the trafficking of children, that benefit from the sexual exploitation of children taking place at the expense of children, and money exchanging hands, and ensuring that those officials benefit. So the solution would be to look at the total value chain in terms of the welfare of children, and look at the links that are corrupted, and ensure that those links that in the sense of a rusted link, that would be a corrupt link, either an official member of government or law enforcement agency, or the members of the non-governmental organizations, or your social services, or your community-based organization, would be to look at the vulnerability in the value chain and stem the tide there, and ensuring that we stem the tide there, we create a safe and a secure environment. And how do we stem the tide? Closer investigation must lead us to a situation where excuse me, law enforcement agencies arrest those who are involved in ensuring that there's conflict, and out of that conflict, children are used for nefarious and satanic purposes, creating economic and financial benefit and gain for those who are behind the conflict, number one. Number two, it is the responsibility of the United Nations, the people of the world, organizations like in our country, you have the gift of the givers who have been working very hard in Turkey, helping with the survivors, searching for the survivors, search and rescue effort. It is our responsibility to join forces with organizations like Gift of the Givers in ensuring that we understand what happens with those children whose parents have perished, working hand in glove with emergency services in those countries, as well as law enforcement agencies and all other agencies that must ensure that the children are safe and secure in terms of conflict, in terms of natural disasters.
Thank you, sir. You may continue with the presentation.
It is also important that the 2.3 billion that you spoke about, that we break it down to ages. These 2.3 billion people are adolescents or youth, adolescents between the age of 10 and 19. And those are the victims that are recruited or forced into armed conflict as child soldiers from South Sudan, Somalia, you remember in Rwanda, you remember in Uganda, you remember in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is against that background that when we look at adolescents, you and I know that it is a generation that we must look at in terms of future leaders that must begin to get intense training on leadership and development of their communities by creating a safe and a secure environment. And by the way, this data is available on the UNICEF data warehouse. These figures, these steps that we talk about, in case members of the audience and panel members and all those who are interested want to focus their attention in creating an organization that would promote the rights of children. The population under the age of 5 years is 656,640,181.5. This only suggests that those are the ones who are in need of basic good nutrition, healthcare, whether it's immunization, whether it's breast milk or being breastfed by the parents who might also be victims of conflict or who might be displaced victims from conflict all over the world and from natural disasters. The share of the urban population of young people in the world would be 57.35, rightfully so, as it has come through your stats. These are critical elements. Now, what is it that Interpol, particularly from the 10 back crime point of view, which is a campaign that I am leading in South Africa, can do to ensure that the rights of children are respected, they are promoted, a safe and a secure platform is created for children's rights. It is important that we look at the 10 back crime as that campaign that ensures that money that exchanges hands when children are involved in conflict, when children are trafficked, when children are abducted, when children are forced into sexual prostitution. It is not your money that is used to promote a violation of the children's rights. What do I mean when I say it is not your money? I am going to draw your attention. When we buy these cell phone chargers and we buy the cell phone screens and we buy the pouches of the cell phones, we buy them at street lights, we buy them at fly-by-night or fish and chip stores in our communities from people of dubious and suspicious backgrounds. We create financing that funds the monsters that violate the rights of children. So the 195 member countries of Interpol benefiting from the awareness that we continuously raise with the sole intention of turning back crime. We should not buy those counterfeit goods, those counterfeit baby formulas, because they finance terrorism, they finance the human traffickers, they finance child abductors, and many of those satanic-minded business people who violate the rights of children. So we have a responsibility to say to law enforcement agencies worldwide, intensify your intelligence-driven operations and strategies so that you know what happens in the far-flung areas, communities of country A or country B, to ensure that children are not trafficked, children are not promised schooling opportunities over in area A or B, in country A or B, where there are no schooling opportunities, but being lured to provide sexual favors and entertainment or fantasies for the satanic men who sleep with children, for pedophiles, if I want to put it that way.
All right. Herb, you have any questions for the ambassador?
Unmute your mic, Sir Herb.
Yes, I apologize, man. I keep forgetting I'm muted. But Ambassador,
Yes.
I noted in a Commonwealth query by the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, or a meeting, that says Commonwealth countries and beyond, millions of children do not receive the protection of existing laws and remain at risk of sexual abuse and exploitation by offenders, both domestically and extraterritorially. Now, the US has a law that if you travel for the purposes of engaging in sexual relation with minors overseas, that you'll be prosecuted if it's discovered. And in one case I'm aware of that happened in a Montego Bay hotel in Jamaica. That person was forced to, by the local agent in charge at the US Embassy, forced the government to take action. All the government did was give them 6 months in jail and let them out early. But he had the agent get on the aircraft, and when the aircraft landed in Miami, that person was rearrested, later on tried in California, and received 10 years in jail. So are there any other laws like that that are coming to the rescue of our kids that you see on the horizon, whether in Africa, whether in Asia or anywhere else?
There are such laws that exist. The challenge is in the enforcement of those laws. I have no clue why, as we said earlier on, the state checks the responsibility of brutalizing pedophiles, brutalizing those who use children in armed conflict. I am sure that those laws are in South Africa. If you are found to have violated a minor, you get given a new uniform. The orange jumpsuit becomes your outfit for a certain number of years that the judge would have given you. You get given state accommodation, jail, and this is where the people of the 65 million people of South Africa would want to see the abusers of children and those who molest children. I am aware that in most parts of the world, children's laws or acts or any of the statutes that looks at the rights of children exist. I am not sure if there is no political will to ensure that law enforcement, criminal justice cluster is supported to ensure that you get rid of the monsters that prey on children.
And the political will goes also for CARICOM countries in the Caribbean, because back last year, I had submitted, along with the attorney for child rights in Trinidad, a recommendation that a Western Hemisphere database of predators be created and administered by the US. And this went to the Western Hemisphere senator here in the US Senate. Well, the blowback I received was that I should have started in my home country. And starting in my home country meant going back to Jamaica and having the Jamaican Parliament, a submission to the Commissioner of Police. Jamaican Parliament would then tackle this. I did just that, just for the hell of it. I submitted it to the Commissioner of Police. He went to the Commissioners' Conference in the Bahamas, but nothing happened. So I'd seized on the opportunity to present it here in the US, because we have something called the Public Law 114-291, which allows the diaspora members to submit suggestions or laws or what have you, requests to your local representative, congressman, or senators for consideration. And this is how ICS has been successful in the past, because we were instrumental in getting that law put in place back in 2016, and it opened up things to diaspora members so that they can make submissions. So if they're going to go that route and say, well, you have to submit through your home countries, and you do that and nothing happens, does that then suggest there is this a certain type of platitude where they say, oh, you should have brought this to me, but then when it's brought to them, they do nothing about it? I mean, do we have representatives from Interpol in the Caribbean that can push these ideas?
Yes, we do. And I am sure that some of us would need to join hands with Interpol Washington, Interpol Caribbean, Caribbean lands or spaces or Caribbean space, and ensure that we humbly, respectfully, decently write to the Prime Minister in Jamaica as men, as fathers of the world, supporting fathers in Jamaica, supporting fathers in the diaspora who are leading the charge. I come from a school of thought that would say, when you submit it, it is my responsibility, and all those of you who are online, particularly fathers and men in general. It is our responsibility as men of the world to stand up, not out of being radical or being hot-headed, like we used to be, some of us stone throwers, like they were calling us many years ago before democracy. It is our responsibilities as fathers of the world to join fathers in Jamaica, to write directly to the Prime Minister, who will engage the Minister of National Security in ensuring that a secure and safe space is designed and created for children to be safe and secure, by ensuring that there are laws, that there are instruments that will ensure that the children in the Caribbean, I'm just using Jamaica as an example, the children in the Caribbean are safe and secure, even if it means we must write to the president of Haiti. Also, to egg on, to both nudge and edge those who might be in the same space as I am, Interpol 10-back crime ambassadors in the Caribbean, for us to come together and produce a draft document that would then be sent to country A and country B in the Caribbean to say, we need your support to ensure that children in Haiti are safe. I struggle to sleep when I think of the children in Haiti, those whose parents have perished as a result of the conflict, those who have perished those whose parents have perished as a result of the earthquake. It is not a nice experience. I'm a father, and I always think about kids, children, particularly from poorer countries, particularly from poor backgrounds. I am from a poor background myself, pulled myself by my bootstraps, and today I can safely say it is not a wonderful experience to see children suffering, and some of us holding their hands as if we are the be all and end all. I'm saying, when you write a follow-up to the Minister of National Security, we must copy the president. And like I said, not out of disrespect, not out of trying to influence foreign policy, no, but as fathers in the world, helping a father who might be the Minister of National Security, who might be the president, who might be fathers in that space, to ensure that there are instruments that ensure that children are safe and secure.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. I don't know if Dr. Claire can hear or she wants to say anything, but is there anybody else out there who wants to say something? Stafford?
I don't really have anything to say on this matter. I've just been listening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this information. We are really staring down a tunnel that sometimes feels hopeless, but we're trying our best to find lights that we can shine. And this conversation is very important because as we move towards our next major event, which is Caribbean American Heritage Month, we do plan to have hopefully 2 days on the Hill on the Senate side as well as on the House side. And security will be, I guess, the opening gambit of both days, because at the end of the day, if people are not secure, nothing else, I mean, physically secure, nothing else is going to matter. So of course, we're going to talk about climate security and food security and other security, but we want to start with this as a basis and tying it to UN SDG 16 on peace and justice. And to the extent that we can find ways in which we can empower, we really have to find ways to empower the Caribbean civil society. They have been very disempowered. They mostly are not funded. They mostly are volunteers. And so it's very challenging. So part of our responsibility as we see it is to gather knowledge and trying to find a way to now institutionalize the process. So I just want to say thank you, Jeffrey Tavares, for joining us in this process. We are looking forward to continuing this dialogue and really seeing how we can do this transborder, transnational cooperation. As you know, the Caribbean region is considered in the 6 continents of Africa. And in a wider sense, I say one of the things we need to be thinking about is when some of the islands disappear in 30 years, we have to find somewhere in Africa to land. So we better start making friends and family from now. So we have somewhere to go and create an alternate Barbuda, an alternate Anguilla, and these other small islands that have no hills whatsoever. They're very flat. So there's no way they're going to survive climate change. But before we come to that disaster, we have an impending disaster of in terms of the levels of criminality against people and against the state by members of the state themselves. And so we really have to figure out how can we empower people, and then what can we as diaspora do to leverage partners like yourself, experts like former FBI executive Mr. Rattigan, so we can come up with something that's doable, not just have a talk shop, but have a do shop. So that's what we're here trying to do, figure out with some actions. So any specific actions that we can do with limited funding, whether it's a database, it's an online platform, these are things ICS is committed to supporting out of pocket without funding, because that's what we can do. But we have to start somewhere, and that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that this June, we're launching some specific project that begins with some way of data sharing or information sharing, that people feel safe to post information on a platform and begin to get this word out. So that's what we're trying to get to, something very practical that we can do with limited funding that we get, that we're basically self-financing. Thank you for the opportunity for saying a few words, Herb.
Not a problem. Just if you did not know, Ambassador Dr. Claire Nelson is the president of ICS, and a distant relative. We're still searching for the link, so no problem. I would like to say also to my fellow panelists, if there are no further questions, a big thank you for being here today. Mr. Rattigan, Mr. Tavares, Dr. Pierre, Mr. Silva, who had to leave, and of course, Stafford. If you want to say any words, Stafford, this is it. I've heard from you. There were some other folks on earlier, Ambassador. I think they might have been from our group. There were some similar names out there. Are you aware of a couple of people get from the cyber group getting on?
I have learned when they were calling me because some of them couldn't get access from the link. A sizable number of people might have got through before some of us were able to join you. And thank you very much. We had to make do. We are African, and we make things happen. And we made it happen through thick and thin, through trying and difficult times, through trials and tribulations. And I am sure that we can join forces in making the Caribbean or Region 6, as you normally put it, app. Make sure that we join hands with Dr. Claire, Dr. Claire's ICS, and in ensuring that we create cross-cultural programs and platforms. Like I've always spoken about, it is important that you have your kids coming over here, I have my kids coming over that side, and you are able to live in the space where I am. We reconfigure the world. If we are not going to reconfigure who we are and create our own reality, there'll be organizations that will create a alternative reality for us. Just as a parting shot, the Global Initiative released a report last year in December where they were talking about the powder storm from the Latin America, right through to South Africa, through to Eastern Africa. What is important is for you to know that South Africa has been used as a transit point for drugs distribution, cocaine distribution into Australia and into Eastern Africa. And what is shocking from the parting shot would be the the number of people who are addicted to cocaine, who smoke cocaine daily between 2020 and 2021, 350,000 in South Africa. And that 350,000 cocaine addicts or users was for that financial year, 2020 to 2021. We don't know yet. I'm waiting for the report to be produced and for us to discuss it on this platform in terms of doing a comparative analysis to look at youngsters or youth who are addicts of crime. I'm not going to talk about the runners for the drug laws. It is shocking for me and yourself to know that 350,000 people smoke cocaine in South Africa daily, and the large chunk are the youngsters. In my hometown, my mother's street is the last street before the open fell. You see youngsters pushing trolleys, pushing scrap, going to sell scrap so that they can get $40 or $50 just for them to go and buy a fix for the day. It's heartbreaking and it's destructive, and it violates the rights of children, particularly looking at that age group 10 to 19 and beyond. They are addicted, and beyond they would be going into cash in transit highs, they would be going into bank robberies, they would be going into ATM bombings and all those evil things that happen as a result of an insecure and unsafe environment that is created by the lethargic state actors who must ensure that all are safe and secure as children and as young people or youth.
Go ahead.
Yes, if I may. Ambassador, thank you for coming on. We need to do more of these programs, Sir Herb, because I am seeing in the chat room here, and I'm so happy that we're not doing it live on the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel, because a lot of people on the chat is saying that this is so interesting, as usual, with Wilfred Rattigan and Herbert Nelson Jr. coming on, and with our good friend from out of Interpol, Ambassador Andy, and all the guests that came on here. The people who are on the YouTube channel is saying they need more of this, because some of the topic that we touch on, and some of the guests that spoke about it, a lot of people didn't know that these things were going on, and most of the things that is being said, and it's very interesting. So I'm suggesting that we should do something like this more often.
Well, I'm committed to a quarterly event. Ambassador, you're going to say something a while ago?
Yes, Herb.
Oh, okay. There's Stafford. Yeah, go ahead. Stafford,
Yeah.
by the way, is retired Jamaica Defense Force, and he's been brilliant in promoting STEM education, or STEAM as it's called now, for our children across the Jamaica. Go ahead, Stafford.
Oh yes, I just got to pull off just to say something here, and we need to see all the way through. Yes, as Herbert said, I'm retired corporal of the Jamaica Defense Force after serving 18 years. Now I'm the chair for the Jamaica Diaspora Northeast Citizen Security, and we're running some programs and working with the youth within the underserved communities. Very interested program. However, oftentimes we have programs like these that educate the communities, people around. Now, what is there from now on? What I've heard, so many information coming out, so many knowledge of things that are there. What is the next move? Why can't there be a collective move, not depending on government to take action, but the community at large pooling the resources and take action to protect these youths? Something needs to be done more than we just having forums and talk about it and put it out there, but we need to have action. They need support. There are people here ready to work to help to support the communities. Give them the confidence, because one of the things that are happening, I know personally happening in Jamaica, is that the family members whose kids are affected are scared to report it, because the system there is not that how they would be going and testify. They are not coming forward. It's not that they won't be prosecuted, but they're not coming forward to testify. We need to build confidence in these people, educate them, their protection ways that we can protect them. But something needs to be done with the information that is at hand. And that is what I would love to see. Need action, and action now.
Okay, thanks, Stafford. Of course, as you know, we ourselves started a program to demonstrate just that with Special Agent retired Rattigan's community in Jamaica. Did you want to talk to that? Will?
Yes, sir.
No, go ahead, Andy. You're going to say something?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry.
One of the tools my brother Stafford and all guys on the panel and our mother, it is important that we use media, we use social media. And what am I talking about? I realize that the power of the media gets young people addicted to drugs, gets young people jumping borders, going to join ISIS all over the world. We need to use the TikToks of the world. We need to use the WhatsApps of the world. We need to use the social media platforms to create content daily that resonates with the energies and the vibrations of young people in Jamaica, in South Africa, in other parts of CARICOM or the Caribbean. When we produce content that speaks to them, that speaks to their needs, that speaks to their fears, that speaks to their desires, the battle is half won. Remember, you and I are talking at it from an experience of those things that we would not have done in the past, even now. Taking advantage of our strict parent, Mama Rattigan, will. They will not allow us to do these things. Today, our kids are able to watch porn on their cell phones. If we can find a way that will make them to come to that application, come to that social media platform to pick up on the discussions that we are building now as a platform. We will be, I am for the idea, and my brother suffered. I don't wait for government to make things happen. Will, you know yourself? I do things for my country and I do things for my people, and I make sure that there's value in me participating or living in a society or community. So we would need to do that. Even if it's us talking to young people from South Africa on this same medium, Zoom, let's find a way. How best, what are the vulnerabilities that we need to pick from Zoom and you to entertain the youngsters or youth or people just in general on security, safety and security of our communities, and ensure that we get them addicted. We use this media. This media, these social media platforms have been used against us on a number of occasions. And I am not shy to say we have a responsibility of doing the same in a positive way, and ensuring that our communities are safe and secure.
Yeah, Herb.
Thank you, Ambassador. Will, you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say I stopped following that soccer program thing, and I think that you would probably be the best person, since you were instrumental in bringing it to my whole community in Jamaica. I know that you were supposed to get them a soccer tournament and soccer gears and get FIFA involved and all of that.
Right. They're still on the drawing board where we can get requests in to the respective parish presidents. And we spoke to Kingston and St. Andrew parish president just last week. And so that's still on the drawing board.
Let me ask you one quick question before you're going further. Whatever happened to the, remember there was, we had a discussion with the deputy mayor of Montego Bay regarding FIFA's financial assistance, and he wasn't sure about what was going on. Do we have any follow-up on that?
Well, I need to get his information from you, so
I'll send it to you right now.
Right, good. So what it is, Ambassador, and the same thing stands for any South African community. FIFA Foundation has programs where they will build you a stadium, they will build you a soccerplex. That's like 4 or 6 different competitive soccer fields for their youth, and they serve on the underserved communities, right? In other words, I believe it's from like 5 to 15, and with that age group, it's about saving that particular child in each of these communities, isolating them from the gangs, and have them to participate in soccer or football, as we prefer to say, programs within their communities. So this is what we're pushing right now on the island, and on different islands we have suggested it to them. So you can ask your football federation president, have you encouraged each of the communities in South Africa to request sponsorship from FIFA Foundation? They'll give you the stadium, they'll give you the field completed, they give you the goalposts, crossbar, they give you the line marking, they give you coaches to do trainer programs. They give you everything you need. And so it's important that we take advantage of that. They have billions of dollars from each of the World Cups that they set aside specifically for these programs. So it's about saving our youth. Go ahead, Ambassador.
I support that initiative. However, I would like you and I and the rest of the guys on this panel, as well as those who are listening, joining in as the audience. I think it is important that we approach Bill Gates and say, we want you to fund coding and robotics competition or boot camp for the 4 quarters of the year. Every 3 months, there is a robotics and coding boot camp where young ladies, young boys, and those who are interested in information technology to participate. With all due respect to all of you, I have never played football and it is not my thing. I would rather look at building a platform to create an understanding, a basic understanding of cybersecurity, so that a young man from Jamaica, a young man from Beckersdale, where I was born and bred, or Tembisa will, for that, or Mamelodi at Craigville, can be able to build a laptop. I don't have any problem with football. My favorite team is Kaizer Chiefs. I know you support Orlando Pirates, will, in South Africa. Support up the Bucks, I know. Yeah.
Herb.
Yeah.
Long story.
Who's that? I didn't catch that.
No, that was me trying to really say to the what's his name from South Africa?
The ambassador. The
ambassador.
Yeah.
Sir, I am 100% with what you're saying. No disrespect to the idea of soccer, but the soccer is very good to bring peace and love. But after the soccer, they go back to the similar situation that what is happening in the underserved communities. We need to have centers that these battered or parents can be protected, go to and be more educated in mental health and how they to respond to these things. Now, what you talk about the technology, and the reason why I'm saying I'm 100% with that idea is that at this moment, and Herb knows that I am coordinating coding program, virtual coding code program, and one of the person is online here that initiated it, Dr. Claire Nelson. I think it was 2 years ago at one of her forum. We started out with scratch coding, and it has been gravitating within the inner city youth. We need to teach them technology because that's what's going on. And I'm 100% with you that if we can channel the money in areas where we can have centers, because internet service is not too reliable in Jamaica, and doing it from home, they have problems. But if we can have centers that we can have these groups to go in. Right now, we have almost 200 participant kids from 8 years old up. A matter of fact, 4. We have them all over in diaspora and in Jamaica. We need that. And that's one of the things I would love to see, that we can put our resources, get resources to build centers at the school, the churches, and in the communities. Great idea, and I love that. I hope we can work on that and we can get the resources.
Let's go to SSL and say you wasted people's money. People's money got stolen, or whatever term that they want to use. I'm sure they have insurance of those monies that are. Let them show us goodwill and ensure that they sponsor those programs that will teach young people in Jamaica, in South Africa, and Soweto, in the Caribbean, that will teach them finance, that will help them open small business accounts. Ultimately ensure that there is a bank in the Caribbean run, owned, and operated by young people who are the future leaders in our community. We come from an era where our great-grandfathers were slaves. We must never allow a situation where Tato, my son here, or Timelo, my son, is going to be a dignified slave wearing a tie and many of those things. we need to begin to focus on projects that must shake the world, a project that must show that we have what it takes to think. In as much as we want the Jay-Z's of the world to be second or third generation after this generation, we want people, we want youngsters who will be able to survive climate change, who will be able to survive artificial intelligence that's going to take away jobs from other people. I am focusing a special attention on research on the impact of artificial intelligence on the people of Jamaica, on the people of Tembisa, on the people in South Africa. Remember, the majority of the people in this country are African, and I am sure a sizable member of the island, Jamaica, are people like me, and they would need to have skill and expertise of managing artificial intelligence and of ensuring that they go into safety and security should their artificial intelligence want to wipe us away from the face of the earth. We need to have prepared future soldiers now, because I'm sure in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, all these members who are on the panel, they'll be old men. So we have a responsibility to begin to build a platform. And I'm sure tech companies can build a big marquee in Jamaica. That marquee will have cubicles, will have everything that will allow us to set up laptops, to set up whether it's your phone, whether it's a phone repair opportunity, or computer repairing opportunity, laptop repairing opportunity, so that there can be skills within our communities. I'm sick and tired of watching young Africans dance to visitors from England, the king or the queen. I want young Africans to meet the king or the queen of England, pound to pound, when it comes to technology, when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to skill, when it comes to the ability to research, when it comes to the ability to write a good book, a good novel, a good technical book on skill A or skill B.
Thank you, Ambassador. Well, just to reassure everybody that it's not just us coming out to play football. We are looking for construction of a meeting place. We are looking for an attraction to assemble, because when the first 4 hours of sports and meeting is over with, we can have a second 4 hours for training and development. So the same training and development you're talking about happening in the communities now, you now have a captive audience to which you can introduce it to. And guess what? The place of assembly is paid for by somebody else. Right now, we don't have that. We have nothing in most of these communities. And this is why we were going in that direction. But no, that's the big picture. It's called Safer Cities by Developing Smarter Communities. And how you develop those smarter communities is attract people, and once they're attracted, then you deliver your programs at that center of attraction. So
in fact we have a program called the Smart City Project, as well as the Safer City from a South African policing services point of view.
Yeah,
you have a Safer City program. We would need to look into those programs and ensure how best do we knock our heads together to make sure that they benefit places like Jamaica or the Caribbean and many of those things. And Will, you know that I participated in the community policing strategy, in crafting the community policing strategy 2015 to 2019. And before you left, Will, you know, myself and General Petros crafted the Gauteng co-created policing strategy, aimed at ensuring that there are those a good soccer game app, as well as safety and security is extracted using entertainment, football, and many of those things. And I know that we can get people like Lionel Messi to come through and ensure that they do what they do best when they are in the same space as we are. He's one of the ambassadors of the 10 back crime, Lionel Messi and Shah Rukh Khan. These are the people who we can say, let's go to Jamaica, let's go and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, that's fantastic. See where the Chinese offered training for coaches and up to, I think, 18 months, 12 to 18 months. So I would think that the same thing could be done with South Africa. Ambassador, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate everything you've said. To everybody else on the panel, same. It's now a little after 3 o'clock, and unless we have any other questions, Dr. Pierre, are you good? Dr. Pierre, can you hear me?
Unmute your mic, Dr. Pierre.
Sorry about that. I said that I am good. It's a very interesting study. It's a very interesting group. I think that, as one of the other persons mentioned, that we should do this more often.
Yeah.
I think that, we have to, just be there more often. We also have to, as a group, have enough data to present to the officials. And this is not necessary. We do not have to depend on the government officials. We can do it ourselves, and we inform them of what we're doing, and we need to get their support.
Okay, so we need to work with you and to develop some data to support the arguments we want to present.
Yes, because as I said, you could always get. So we collect we collect the SDG data, the UN Sustainable Development Goals data. So we collect the 19 indicators, okay, of the Black indicators, but in all, we collect about 33 Black indicators. So whenever a country may want any type of information, they will ask us. In certain countries now, we are now moving to be their statistics department, because it's cheaper for us to handle the data, because we will not lose the data. And from our experience, if you work with someone from, let's say, a statistics office, and that person does a very, very good job, that person most likely would be promoted, okay, and he will lose all the institutional knowledge. And second of all, most of the data in these countries are held in personal computer, personal PC computer. And when they leave the office, leave the department, that data is gone.
Gone with them, yes.
So that's where we come in.
Okay. Sir Herb, before you go, Ambassador, I must say that you stir up a conversation on my YouTube channel pertaining to SSL. So we need to talk more about SSL one of these days, along with Wilfred Rattigan.
I agree, Jeff, and my point of departure would be to say to those who are managing SSL, the people of Jamaica must go after them, sell their houses, make sure that the funds that come in develop the communities. After everyone else has been paid his or her money, those were investors in that institution. Same as Silicon Valley Bank. I don't have any interest in Silicon Valley Bank, but I'm just saying, this morning I was watching CNN. The bank collapsed because of mismanagement, and I'm sure SSL collapsed as a result of corruption and many of those things. Yep. So we need to come down hard on them so that they can fund development, safety, and security.
Okay. So thank you, Ambassador. Without further ado, gentlemen, our session is now adjourned, and we thank you. We look forward to June, Caribbean American Month. We'll be a panel there. So that's the 3rd week of June, Ambassador. I don't have the.
I'm coming to Jamaica. I must come to Jamaica in June.
In June, okay. So you're gonna use Will's penthouse down there, right?
I'm going to go to Mama Rattigan's place.
Yeah. And of course, Dr. Pierre, he has a penthouse in every island because he goes to all these islands.
I go to Jamaica very often. Jamaica is like my home. I'm a golfer.
Yeah.
And there's no other place in the Caribbean where you could have beautiful golf other than Jamaica. You have 8 courses, best courses. So I come every year around the December 18th to the 27th and I play golf.
A trial golf course?
Yeah, all of them. So I am Jamaica is where the place is. And if you ambassador, I mean, I'm not Jamaican, but ambassador, next time you come, you should come around this time. There's something called a boys and girls champ or something like that.
Yes.
The champ is going on now. Yeah.
March. Okay, for high school. I heard that the Trinidad and Tobago Minister of Sport is in Jamaica now. And I think that they want to take the whole idea to bring it to Trinidad. And it's just the people, okay, can do it. And this association has been doing this for like over 100 years. So Jamaica is a good place. And remember that our forefathers, our founding father Marcus Garvey was a Jamaican. So we still have to get homage to Jamaica and Haiti. And because these are some of the countries who fought against resistance, who fought colonialism. And I think that we always have to give Jamaica and Haiti the praise, because without Jamaica and let's say in the Caribbean and without Haiti, we don't know, we might still be colonized.
Might still be.
So we have to, we have to sort of give praise to Jamaica. I know it's hard for based on our indoctrination. We see Jamaica as an outlier, but Jamaica, a small country, have some of the best athletes in the world, created a product of reggae music that is still used everywhere. So we have to give Jamaican credit.
Doc, we haven't celebrated that element of reggae and that element of the sprinters. We see it on TV, we give them a round of applause, but we haven't used it to build a brand that will get tourists going in there.
I think that the athletics program in Jamaica, you see the little kids from like primary grade, they call it like class 1 to 5 or class 4, whatever, and some little kids, they all know the rudiments, the technique, how to run. I mean, this is amazing. It's like you can never get this anywhere in the world, and I'm so fascinated by this. I said, man, it is. I'm originally from the Caribbean, and we were good athletes in school, back. And one day there was I was a 400-meter guy, and one of the coaches or someone came from Jamaica, and went to my headmaster, and brought my mother in, and she said, well, your son is a very good athlete. We were thinking about taking your child to Jamaica. And my mom was like so upset. Now, I wish she had done that.
You could have been a 400-meter Olympic champ.
What's that?
I said you could have been a 400 meters Olympic champ right now.
Yes, and then 20 years later, a guy that Kirani James came to me, spoke to me, and now look at that. I mean, so Jamaica has always been one of the favorite places for me to go. I love the country, and I love the Caribbean, and hopefully, every year I come to Jamaica, every single year. Every year. It's the best place.
Well, there you go, Ambassador. Not just June, but March, June, and December.
Yes.
3 times a year.
Okay.
All right, gents.
Well, thank you very much.
Be good. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming on. Thank you all for watching our faithful viewers on YouTube. Thank you all. Until you hear our voice again, may God bless you. May God bless our friends in South Africa. Ambassador Andy, God bless and keep you, sir. And when you go to Jamaica, have a drink of the drunk roll.
Before you thank everyone else, it would be a grave mistake on my part. My beautiful young wife borrowed me a phone to connect to you. I am saying in front of the world, that is the panel. Thank you, Madame, for borrowing me your phone to get and have a wonderful chat.
Your wife keeps saving you, Andy. I don't understand it. Saving.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thanks to her.
Okay. All the best, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel. Have a good day, everyone. Ambassador, we'll talk.
Thank you, sir.
To her. Okay.
Bye-bye.